Are you ready for the ultimate Zarpado compilation facts? Subscribe and let's start. NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission launched in 2016, reached the asteroid Bennu, collected samples, and brought them back to Earth on September 24th of 2023, completing a 7-year journey. It returned about 4.23 ounces of material, the largest haul from an asteroid to date, and organic compounds, sugars, and other chemical building blocks have been found in those rocks, helping us understand how life could have arisen on Earth. Coconut oil became a star in the 20th century. It went from being something you'd find in health food stores to being used in healthy recipes, bulletproof coffee, skincare routines, and hair masks. Its fame rested on the idea of being natural, although many nutritionists later qualified its supposed benefits due to its high saturated fat content. Colin Firth won the Oscar in 2011 for The King's Speech, where he played George VI, learning to speak in public just as the United Kingdom entered World War II. The film shows how radio transformed the king's voice into a real political tool, so his stammer was not just a personal problem, but a matter of state. The March 11, 2011 earthquake in Japan had a magnitude of 9.0, generated a tsunami that devastated more than 193 square miles of coastline, left nearly 19,500 dead, and caused the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident, classified as level 7, the highest on the international nuclear event scale. This combination changed the energy policies of several countries and reignited the global debate on nuclear energy. In 2010, Catherine Bigelow became the first woman to win the Oscar for Best Director for The Hurt Locker, a low-budget war film that beat Avatar, directed by her ex-husband James Cameron, and which became the highest-grossing film of the moment on the same night. The message was clear. You don't need the biggest budget in the world to make history. Australian Ian Thorpe, a multiple Olympic champion nicknamed Thorpedo, announced his retirement in 2006 at just 24 years old. He had dominated the about 219-yard and about 437-yard freestyle and could have won more medals, so his early departure left swimming without one of its most dominant figures at his peak. The 2012 expedition to the bottom of the Mariana Trench with the Deep Sea Challenger submersible allowed scientists to film and measure conditions at a depth of almost 36,089 feet. In an environment of brutal pressures and total darkness, organisms adapted to the extreme were found, reinforcing the idea that life can arise and persist in places that previously seemed impossible. Google Plus was launched in 2011 as Google's attempt to compete with Facebook by introducing ideas like circles to separate friends, work, and family. Despite integrating the service with YouTube and other Google platforms, it never achieved massive traction and ended up shutting down, serving as an example that even giants can't force a social network if people don't want to move. The 2015 film Spotlight won the Oscar for Best Picture for its almost documentary-like portrayal of a team of journalists uncovering a case of systematic abuse in the church. It showed how slow, data-obsessed investigative journalism can still bring about real change in enormous institutions. The Kepler mission, launched in 2009, spent almost 10 years observing a small patch of sky and ended up discovering more than 2,600 confirmed exoplanets. Thanks to that work, we now know that there are thousands of worlds outside the solar system and that the total number of confirmed exoplanets is already around 6,000, with many more candidates on the waiting list. The New Horizons mission was launched in 2006 and in July 2015 became the first spacecraft to fly by Pluto, passing within about 7,767 miles of the dwarf planet and sending back images of ice mountains, icy plains, and that famous bright heart on its surface. It then continued its journey, flying by the Kuiper Belt object Arrokoth in 2019. The rise of plant-based foods after 2015, with products like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, didn't just target vegans. It sought to win over meat eaters with burgers that mimic the texture and flavor of meat using plant proteins, dyes that imitate blood, and campaigns focused on reducing emissions, animal suffering, and health risks. Kate Winslet won the Oscar in 2009 for The Reader after several previous nominations for films such as Titanic and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That role, in which she plays an illiterate former Nazi guard, also earned her a Golden Globe and a BAFTA, ending a streak of years in which she was always nominated but never won. Eliud Kipchoge broke the world marathon record in Berlin in 2018 with a time of 2:01:39, lowering the previous mark by 1 minute and 18 seconds. The biggest improvement in a marathon record since the 1960s. He would later break his own record again and go under 2 hours in a controlled experiment, cementing his reputation as the fastest man in the world over 26.2 miles. The film Argo tells the story of one of those CIA plans that seem invented by screenwriters who'd had too much coffee, pretending to film a science fiction movie in Iran to smuggle 6 diplomats out undercover during the hostage crisis. The best part is that this crazy scheme was based on the Canadian Caper, a real operation where diplomats pose as a Canadian film crew. And the plan worked so well that years later, Hollywood awarded it the Oscar for Best Picture. Landon Donovan wasn't just good to be American. He became the all-time leading scorer and assist provider for the U.S. national team, with 57 goals and 58 assists, something like being both number 10 and number 9 at the same time. Furthermore, in the 2002 World Cup, the first played in Asia, he won the Best Young Player award while Brazil lifted their 5th title and Ronaldo dominated with 8 goals. The Asoho Space Observatory launched in 1995 with the idea of spending only 2 years looking at the sun, and for decades it has become the official watchdog of our star. It has not only changed the way we understand the solar atmosphere and the solar wind, but it is also a key tool for anticipating solar storms that can fry satellites, affect power grids, and even divert flights, becoming a kind of weather service for space. The concept of gaslighting originated in classic cinema, specifically the 1944 film Gaslight, where a husband manipulates his wife to the point of making her doubt her own sanity. Decades later, the word entered the field of psychology to describe a type of abuse in which you are made to believe that what you see or feel is all in your head. Derrick Rose was so good, so fast, that at 22, he was already the youngest MVP in NBA history, leading a Bulls team to 62 wins with a style of play that resembled a music video of impossible dunks and changes of pace. Years later, injuries hampered his career, but his impact was such that in 2025, Chicago announced it would retire his #1 jersey, placing him in the same hallowed group as Jordan and Pippen within the franchise. Elevated comfort food took classic dishes like mashed potatoes, stew, and mac and cheese, and put them through the filter of haute cuisine. Truffle mashed potatoes with brown butter, stews made with dry-aged beef, burgers with sourdough buns, and artisanal cheeses. The trick is to maintain the emotional embrace of the original dish while adding technique, premium ingredients, and presentations that look Instagram-ready. The weekend transformed the 2021 Super Bowl halftime show into a live music video, a labyrinth of lights and mirrors, dancers with bandages on their faces, and a visual narrative that connected with the aesthetic of his music videos. To achieve this, he personally invested an additional $7 million on top of the official budget, making his performance one of the most expensive in history and a meme factory, with that famous scene of the camera following him as he gets lost among illuminated corridors. Coco not only made half the planet cry, it was the first animated blockbuster with an entirely Latino main cast and such a meticulous recreation of the Day of the Dead that the Mexican public embraced it as their own. The film grossed over $800 million, became the highest-grossing film in Mexican history during its opening weekend, and won 2 Oscars. In 2025, Disney and Pixar confirmed they were already working on Coco 2. The Copenhagen restaurant Noma transformed what were once considered forest herbs, mosses, wild shoots, and icy water shellfish into haute cuisine dishes, popularizing modern Nordic cuisine and the concept of foraging. Its success as best restaurant in the world in multiple rankings sparked a global trend of foraging for wild ingredients, to the point that years later, criticism arose about the risk of overexploiting ecosystems, and people began to talk about moving from everything forage to a more responsible model that also values local agriculture. The Glastonbury Festival is essentially a city that appears and disappears on an English farm. Over 200,000 people camping among relocated cows, 1,000 acres of land transformed into a labyrinth of stages, bars, and circus tents. Three-dimensional laser mapping of caves is turning places impossible to see in their entirety into digital models with millimeter precision. Projects using LiDAR scanners have performed hundreds of scans on enormous systems, generating point clouds that recreate passageways, vaults, and underground chambers. These models are then used to study how the cave formed, how bat colonies move, and much more. The ramen burger was born in 2013 in a Brooklyn market thanks to chef Keiso Shimamoto, who combined a beef patty with 2 buns made of fried ramen noodles and a shoyu-style sauce. The result was so unusual and photogenic that lines grew so long and the media crowned it the new cronut. Adele had such a phenomenal night at the 2012 Grammys that she earned the nickname Adele Rolls in the Gold. She took home 6 gramophones in a single night, including Album of the Year for 21 and Record and Song of the Year for Rolling in the Deep. All this after undergoing vocal cord surgery a few months prior. Zoom went from being that weird meeting app to becoming a classroom, office, and family birthday party all at once. In December 2019, it had around 10 million daily participants, and by April 2020, it had surpassed 300 million daily participants, a 30-fold increase in just 3 months. The Japanese probe Hayabusa did something that sounds like science fiction. It traveled to the tiny asteroid Itokawa, landed, collected microscopic dust particles, and returned to Earth in 2010. Those specks, barely 1,500 grains of regolith, became a scientific treasure because they are the first asteroid material brought home and help reconstruct how the solar system formed billions of years ago. Matthew McConaughey had to lose almost 44 pounds and completely transform his Beach Boy image to play Ron Woodruff in Dallas Buyers Club. His gaunt physique and the true story of a patient fighting the healthcare system during the HIV crisis earned him an Oscar in 2014 and marked the definitive turning point in his career, the famous McConaissance, where he went from romantic comedies to intense and dark roles. The 2005 Kashmir earthquake was so devastating that it changed the human map of the region in just 1 minute. A magnitude 7.6 quake shook northern Pakistan and parts of India and Afghanistan, leaving between 74,000 and nearly 90,000 dead and some 2.8 million people homeless. Israeli cuisine leapt from the homes and markets of Tel Aviv to become the new trendy cuisine in cities like New York and London. Humble dishes like hummus, falafel, and shakshuka began to be served with haute cuisine presentations, blending Jewish, Arab, and Mediterranean traditions. The case of Lance Armstrong is almost a modern sporting tragedy. He went from being a symbol of overcoming cancer and a 7-time Tour de France champion to losing all his titles when the U.S. anti-doping agency uncovered an organized doping system within his team. In 2012, he received a lifetime ban and the annulment of all his results since 1998, becoming one of the most extreme examples of how doping can rewrite the history of a sport. Saturn's moon Enceladus appeared to be a simple ball of ice until the Cassini probe detected geysers of water erupting from its south pole in 2005. This revealed a liquid ocean hidden beneath miles of ice. Subsequent analyses found salts, hydrogen, and complex organic molecules in these jets' ingredients that on Earth are associated with hydrothermal activity and, potentially, life. Today, Enceladus is on the short list of places in the solar system that are candidates for harboring life. Russell Crowe not only won the Oscar for Gladiator in 2001, but throughout filming, he fought to ensure that his character, Maximus, remained a man obsessed with the memory of his murdered family and not a generic action hero filled with sex scenes. Years later, Crowe himself criticized the sequel Gladiator II because according to him, it betrays the moral core that made the original story of the general turned slave and then Colosseum legend so powerful. The Sinabung volcano in Indonesia lay almost dormant for centuries before suddenly erupting with fury in the 2010s. In just 1 week in 2014, it experienced more than 200 eruptions, spewing columns of ash and pyroclastic flows that forced the evacuation of more than 20,000 people and caused several deaths. The cronut, invented in 2013 by chef Dominique Ancel in New York, transformed a simple breakfast into an event, a fried and filled croissant donut hybrid. The craze was such that people lined up as early as 3 a.m. to get one, with wait times of up to 5 hours. And the idea was copied by bakeries around the world with all sorts of hybrids. SpaceX's Starhopper spacecraft looked like a water tank on legs. But its small hops in 2019 were the acid test for the Raptor engines and the fully reusable flight philosophy that would later be used in Starship. One of its most famous flights was a hop of about 492 feet in Boca Chica, Texas, where it took off, hovered, and landed upright, showing that the idea of rockets landing like science fiction could become routine. In 2005, the NHL decided that ties no longer provided enough excitement and added the shootout at the end of overtime in the regular season. 3 players from each team face off against the goalie, and if the score is still tied, it goes to sudden death. In one fell swoop, ice hockey gained much more spectacular finals for television and fans. Cyclone Sidr, which struck Bangladesh in November 2007, reached Category 5 with winds of around 162 miles per hour and a storm surge that devastated entire villages. It left approximately 3,400 dead and caused more than $2.3 billion in damage. Even so, mass evacuations in the natural barrier of the Sundarbans mangrove forest prevented the tragedy from being even worse. The 2003 Rugby World Cup final was decided by one of those moments that are etched in your memory. England and Australia were tied 17-17 in extra time, when with just seconds remaining, Johnny Wilkinson lined up his left foot and buried a perfect drop goal. That 20-17 victory not only gave England their first World Cup, but also turned that technical feat into an eternal highlight reel. Dishes like banh mi and Vietnamese noodle bowls became food truck stars in the 2010s. A baguette-like bread inherited from French colonization, but filled with marinated pork, cilantro, pickles, and bold sauces, or enormous bowls where fresh herbs, spiced broth, and grilled meat mingle. The appeal lies in the fact that they are inexpensive, photogenic, and customizable. To portray June Carter Cash in Walk the Line, Reese Witherspoon didn't just act. She sang all the songs herself and spent months learning to play instruments and imitate the real June stage mannerisms. This obsessive work earned her an Oscar in 2006 and resulted in one of the few musical biopics where the lead duo, with Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash, sounds and behaves like a real band, not like dubbed actors. The Big Island of Hawaii literally keeps growing because the Kilauea volcano has been sending lava into the ocean for decades. Its 2018 eruptions opened dozens of fissures, destroyed thousands of homes, and created new deltas of solidified lava upon contact with water, adding land to the island's map. The Salt Cathedral of Zipaquira is literally a church carved 591 feet underground, inside a salt mine. In 2007, after a national vote, the Colombian Congress declared it the first wonder of Colombia, and today it receives around 600,000 visitors a year, who walk through tunnels illuminated in blue and violet light until they reach a gigantic ship carved from salt rock, with crosses and sculptures that seem otherworldly. Glass frogs from the Centrolinidae family became famous because their bellies are so transparent that, if you look at them from below, you can see their beating heart, liver, and intestines as if they were a living anatomical model. Some species even play with their own blood. When they rest, they hide their red blood cells in special organs to become less visible to predators, a trick that intrigues biologists who study camouflage and circulation. The Atacama Desert in Chile is so dry and extreme that NASA uses it as a testing ground for missions to Mars. Projects like ARADS have sent rovers equipped with drills and life detection equipment to practice drilling into the subsurface and analyzing samples for biological traces, just as will be done on the Red Planet. If an instrument works in the saline, ultra-dry, UV-damaged soil of the Atacama Desert, it has a good chance of working on Mars. The 2007 film No Country for Old Men is famous for what it almost lacks: music and dialogue. There are entire chase scenes and tense moments in complete silence, and yet it won Oscars for Best Picture, Director, Adapted Screenplay, and Supporting Actor for Javier Bardem for his portrayal of the assassin with the impossible hairstyle. The TESS mission, launched in 2018, is dedicated to observing minute variations in brightness across millions of stars to detect planets passing in front of them. By mid-2025, TESS had already generated thousands of candidates and helped confirm hundreds of exoplanets, contributing to a catalog that exceeded 6,000 known worlds outside our solar system, from gas giants to potentially temperate rocky planets. The South American giant otter, which can measure over 5.6 feet in length, was so heavily hunted for its fur in the 20th century that its populations collapsed. Today it is listed as endangered, and although commercial hunting has decreased, it remains threatened by riverbank destruction, pollution of Amazonian rivers, and competition for fish with human fisheries. The Qatar National Museum, inaugurated in Doha in 2019, resembles a mineral flower that has bloomed in the middle of the desert. Jean Nouvel designed it inspired by desert roses, gypsum crystals that form naturally in the region. The building is made up of interlocking discs that surround a central courtyard and tells the story of the country from its Bedouin origins to the age of gas and skyscrapers. Vietnamese coffee with condensed milk, called Ca Phê Sua Ja, first conquered the corners of Hanoi and Saigon, and then specialty coffee shops around the world. It is prepared by letting the very strong coffee drip slowly over condensed milk and ice, creating a sweet and bitter explosion that has become emblematic of a country that is now the world's second largest coffee exporter. Bouvet Island is so remote that it's known as the most isolated island in the world, an ice-covered volcanic fragment in the middle of the South Atlantic, some 994 to 1,056 miles from Antarctica and more than 1,243 miles from any inhabited place. Norway uses it as a nature reserve and a base for scientific instrumentation. Chia and flax seeds went from being almost unknown ingredients to appearing in breads, yogurts, bowls, and even detox lemonades during the 2010s. Chia can absorb up to 10 to 12 times its weight in water, forming a fiber-rich gel and providing omega-3 fatty acids. And its global market's already worth billions of dollars, with double-digit growth rates according to recent projections. The vuvuzela at the 2010 South Africa World Cup wasn't just background noise. In the stadiums, it reached over 130 to 140 decibels, similar to having a jet engine or a gunshot next to your ear, prompting complaints from players, TV crews, and doctors about the risk of permanent hearing damage. Nevada's Fly Geyser looks like a portal to another planet, but it was born from human error. In the 1960s, a well was drilled, geothermal water escaped, and over decades, it deposited minerals that formed that psychedelic cone of green, red, and orange hues. It's located on a private ranch and measures only a few yards, but it became an Instagram superstar thanks to its fluorescent thermal pools. Ice cream mochi, that spherical popcorn of ice cream wrapped in elastic rice dough, made the leap to global fame in the 2010s. It went from being a niche dessert in Japanese neighborhoods in the US to filling the freezers of supermarkets and fast food chains. Its chewy texture, unusual flavors like green tea, lychee, and matcha with black sesame, and its photogenic appeal on social media made it the perfect snack for the Instagram era. The Danakil Desert in Ethiopia looks like the opening screen of a science fiction game. It's about 410 feet below sea level, one of the hottest inhabited places on the planet, and combines active volcanoes, lava lakes, and fluorescent-colored acidic pools that exceed 194 degrees Fahrenheit. Both scientists and extreme tourists use it as a dress rehearsal to imagine what it would be like to walk on Venus or Mars. The giant panda was reclassified from endangered to vulnerable on the IUCN Red List in 2016, following decades of bamboo reserves, biological corridors, and hunting controls in China. Today, there are an estimated 1,864 pandas in the wild, an increase of about 17% in a decade, and it has become the face of the idea that long-term conservation can work. It's no coincidence that it's been the WWF's iconic logo since 1961. Thai cuisine won the internet's World Championship of Flavor when, in a CNN ranking of the 50 most delicious dishes, Massaman curry came in first, with Tom Yum and Pad Thai also making the top 10. When the James Webb Space Telescope pointed at the Pillars of Creation in 2022, it transformed the nerdy 1990s teen poster into cosmic 4K. Its infrared camera revealed jets of red gas bursting from baby stars hidden within those dust plumes. And this was then combined with another image in mid-infrared to create a near three-dimensional map of the galaxy's most famous star nursery. New York's MoMA reopened in 2004, completely redesigned. Architect Yoshio Taniguchi expanded it to approximately 63,000 square feet, nearly double the previous space, with a 110-foot-high atrium that floods the galleries with natural light. The result was a museum designed for the 21st century, more fluid pathways, views of the sculpture garden, and enough room for contemporary art to breathe without feeling cramped. Formula One went hybrid before road cars. In 2009, it debuted KERS, a system that recovered braking energy and provided an extra 60 km almost 80 horsepower for 6 to 7 seconds per lap. That year, Lewis Hamilton won the Hungarian Grand Prix in a McLaren equipped with KERS, marking the first victory for a hybrid car in the category and paving the way for the era of today's hybrid engines. The polar bear is listed as vulnerable because it literally depends on sea ice to hunt seals. As the Arctic loses ice, the bears have to swim further, expend more energy, and find less food. Studies combining IUCN data and climate models project sharp declines in their populations this century if the ice continues to disappear at the current rate. The Dead Sea is evaporating at a brutal rate. Its level is dropping by about 3.3 feet per year and has already exposed areas where thousands of sinkholes are swallowing roads, beaches, and buildings, forcing the closure of tourist sites like Ein Gedi. Without a massive injection of fresh water, the loss is estimated to be on the order of about 35.3 billion cubic feet per year. Colombian coffee is more than just marketing, featuring a man named Juan Valdez. Since 2007, Café de Colombia has been registered as a protected geographical indication in the European Union, certifying that these beans come from specific regions of the Colombian Andes and maintain certain characteristics of flavor and quality. It is one of the few coffees in the world with this level of legal protection, which safeguards its reputation against imitations. NASA's Grail mission sent 2 twin probes, Ebb and Flow, to orbit the Moon, measuring minute changes in its speed to create the most accurate gravity map we have ever had of the satellite. That map showed, for example, that the crust of the highlands is less dense than previously thought, and helped explain why the near and far sides are so different, with the former being much more volcanic. The Javan rhinoceros is playing hardcore mode. It is estimated that only around 70 to 80 individuals remain, all in a single national park in Indonesia, Ujung Kulon. After the last Vietnamese orangutan was hunted in 2010, every new birth is celebrated almost like a World Cup victory, while at the same time, every failed relocation attempt or natural death is a huge blow to the species. The Great Wall of China was remeasured using modern technology, and in 2012, China announced a staggering figure. Adding up all its sections, it measures approximately 13,167 miles, more than half the Earth's circumference. This number came from a 6-year archaeological survey that combined fieldwork and satellite positioning systems to track even the most eroded remains. The Tapanuli orangutan was only described as a new species in 2017, and to make matters worse, it was born into a critically endangered species. It is estimated that fewer than 800 individuals remain living in the Batang Toru ecosystem in Sumatra. It is the rarest great ape on the planet, with a lineage that diverged some 3.4 million years ago, and now faces deforestation, gold mining projects, and even recent disasters like massive flooding in the area. The inverted pyramid at the Louvre looks like something out of the Da Vinci Code, but it's real. A glass skylight designed by I.M. Pei was inaugurated in 1993 in the center of the underground Carrousel du Louvre shopping mall. The pyramid's tip hangs 4.6 feet above the ground and almost touches a small stone pyramid placed directly below, forming a kind of geometric kiss that is now a must-see for tourists and photographers. At the Grand Canyon, the skywalk is essentially walking on air, a glass horseshoe some 3,937 feet above the Colorado River, with a transparent floor about 2.4 inches thick, designed to support about 800 people at a time. It was built by the Hualapai tribe as a form of self-tourism, and the feeling is so strong that many people reach the edge and don't dare to look down. In Nepal, the Bengal tiger has made a comeback worthy of a documentary. From a mere 121 individuals in 2010, its population grew to approximately 355 adults in 2022, thanks to monitored national parks, biological corridors, and agreements with villages that coexist with the big cats. It is one of the most spectacular increases recorded for a large predator species in the 21st century. The National Gallery in London took advantage of the 2000s to give its Victorian rooms a facelift, restoring the original colors of ceilings and moldings, replacing all the lighting with LEDs, and improving temperature and humidity control. This allowed them to reduce energy consumption while simultaneously ensuring that the 500-year-old paintings look better and suffer less damage. Polynesian cuisine has made its way onto the foodie map thanks to dishes that seem simple but are steeped in history. Poi, for example, is that purple paste made by pounding taro, a staple of the ancient Hawaiian menu, as important as bread in other cultures. It was served at enormous luau feasts alongside underground smoked pork, kalua, lau wrapped in leaves, and desserts like kololo. Today you can find it everywhere, from tourist buffets to modern menus that treat it as a superfood ingredient. Tibet and the entire Himalayas are the third pole of the planet. There, nearly 70% of the plateau's water is stored as ice, feeding giants like the Ganges, the Yangtze, and the Mekong, and sustaining more than 1.4 billion people downstream. Haumea, an elongated dwarf planet spinning rapidly beyond Neptune, surprised scientists in 2017 when, during a stellar occultation, telescopes detected a ring. It is the first known dwarf planet with this jewel, aligned with its equator and close to a 3-to-1 resonance with its rotation, suggesting that rings could be much more common on small bodies than previously thought. Bubble tea originated in Taiwan in the 1980s, but it exploded globally in the 2010s. Taiwanese factories began exporting entire containers of tapioca pearls and syrups, while photos of giant pastel-colored cups went viral on social media. Today you can find it in almost any major city. The Iberian lynx was nearly extinct. In the early 2000s, fewer than 100 wild specimens remain on the entire peninsula. 2 decades of captive breeding, reintroductions, tunnels for them to cross roads, and protection of their main prey, the rabbit, led to a population exceeding 2,000 individuals in 2024, moving the species from critically endangered to vulnerable, one of the most spectacular rescues of a feline in recent history. Poutine originated in rural Quebec in the 1950s as a combination of French fries, cheese curds, and hot gravy, but today it has its own festival circuit. Poutine Week brings together more than 800 restaurants and hundreds of thousands of diners every February to sample versions with foie gras, curry, lobster, or even award-winning vegan options. What began as Quebec junk food has become a Canadian national symbol and a canvas for all kinds of culinary extravagance. The 2012 Tesla Model S was the, "Okay, electric cars are for real" moment. A large sedan with batteries up to 85 kilowatts, an official range of around 264 miles, an acceleration that left combustion engine luxury sedans in the dust. Its arrival coincided with the surge in global EV sales, when people began to see that an electric car was no longer a strange city car, but something that could replace a high-end car and humiliate it at traffic lights. The kakapo, a nocturnal, plump, flightless parrot from New Zealand, was literally on the brink of extinction. In 1995, only 51 known individuals remained. Thanks to predator-free islands, 24/7 surveillance, advanced genetics, and even insemination techniques using special helmets to prevent romances with humans, the population grew to over 230 individuals and continues to grow, with each bird identified by name and capable of living almost 90 years. In Cologne Cathedral, one of the most modern surprises isn't in the Gothic towers, but in a window. In 2007, Gerhard Richter installed a stained glass window made up of 11,263 tiny squares of glass in 72 colors, like a giant pixel art piece covering 1,141 square feet. The work replaced panes destroyed in the war, caused controversy for being completely abstract, and ended up being one of the most popular photo opportunities for visitors. The fairy circles of the Namib Desert are like a glitch in nature, perfectly round patches devoid of vegetation, surrounded by rings of grass, which can range in size from a few yards to more than 98 feet. For years, termites or rare gases were blamed, but models suggest they are an example of vegetation self-organization under extreme drought conditions, forming Turing-like patterns. The pistol shrimp seems harmless until it snaps its claw. It closes it so quickly that it creates a cavitation bubble, which upon collapsing reaches temperatures of several thousand degrees, comparable to the surface of the sun, and generates a sound that can exceed 200 decibels, louder than a gunshot. This mini cannon shot serves to stun prey and inspires studies on cavitation and new sonar technologies. Ferran Adrià transformed El Bulli into the most influential laboratory of modern cuisine. Foams, spheres, liquid nitrogen, and dishes that resembled chemistry experiments defined what later became known as molecular gastronomy. The restaurant earned 3 Michelin stars and was chosen 5 times as the best in the world, before closing in 2011 to become a foundation and research center, with a workshop dedicated solely to inventing techniques and menus of more than 30 courses per season. Whale sharks, the largest fish on the planet, ceased to be ghosts of the ocean when they began to be tagged with satellite transmitters in the early 2000s. This data revealed that some juveniles stay for weeks in certain areas like the Sea of Cortez or the Philippines, while others cross entire oceans. Key information for designing marine reserves and regulating tourism that swims inches away from these filter-feeding giants. NASA's MMS mission launched 4 identical spacecraft in 2015 that fly in a tetrahedral formation around Earth to pursue a nearly invisible phenomenon: magnetic reconnection. By measuring electric and magnetic fields and particles at extremely high resolution, MMS has managed to enter the very thin electron diffusion region, where field lines break and release energy that fuels auroras and geomagnetic storms, giving us for the first time a microscopic view of how space weather explodes. The red panda, that furry raccoon fox that looks like it was designed for plush toys, is an absolute internet star. But in the wild, the story is much harsher. The IUCN lists it as endangered, with fewer than 10,000 mature individuals in a declining population due to deforestation, road construction, and poaching in the Himalayan region in southwest China. The Taiwanese bao, that soft, steamed white bun, has jumped from street stalls to gourmet menus. The classic version contains glazed pork belly, pickles, crushed peanuts, and cilantro inside a kind of fluffy taco. Since the 2010s, chefs in New York, London, and São Paulo have been reinventing it with fried chicken, tofu, prawns, or tempura, and many food trucks offer it in flavor combos, like Oriental sushi sandwiches meant to be eaten with one hand and shared on social media. Cate Blanchett won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her portrayal of Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator, and she did so with such obsession that she watched 35 prints of Hepburn's first 15 films to copy her posture, voice, and gestures. She thus became the first person to win an Oscar for portraying another Oscar-winning actress, a Hollywood meta-achievement worthy of cinephile trivia. Sedna, a distant dwarf planet discovered in 2003, takes about 11,400 years to complete a single orbit around the Sun. Its orbit is so exaggeratedly elliptical that it reaches a distance of about 937 astronomical units, some 19 times farther than Pluto's orbit. Astronomers believe it could be part of the inner Oort cloud, and its unusual orbit fuels theories about unseen planets in the outer reaches of the solar system. The slow food movement was born in Italy in 1986, when Carlo Petrini organized a protest against the opening of a McDonald's near the Spanish Steps in Rome. It wasn't just anger against a hamburger, but against the idea that all cities end up eating exactly the same thing. The concept of a black swan jumped from the Australian lagoons to Wall Street with Nassim Taleb's book, The Black Swan. In 2007, it refers to extremely rare, unpredictable events with enormous impact, which we only later try to explain with simplistic narratives to make sense of it all. The Acropolis Museum in Athens, opened to the public in 2009, is literally built on top of original ruins. It has glass floors that reveal archaeological excavations beneath your feet, and a top floor aligned with the Parthenon to fractions of an inch, so that the sculptures face the actual temple on the hill. It displays more than 4,250 objects in about 1,695 square feet, and was also conceived as an architectural argument in the ongoing debate about the return of the Parthenon marbles. The turmeric golden latte went from an Ayurvedic home remedy to a hipster coffee shop staple around 2016. Milk blended with turmeric, black pepper, ginger, and cinnamon served in a picture-perfect yellow cup. Google reported a more than 50% increase in searches for turmeric in just a few months, and many embraced it as a healthy alternative to coffee, though studies on its actual benefits still lag far behind the Instagram hype. The Yangtze River dolphin, known as the baiji, survived for some 20 million years in the murky waters of China's largest river, but couldn't withstand a few decades of river traffic, fishing nets, and pollution. In 2006, a 6-week expedition covered some 2,175 miles of the river with hydrophones and observation equipment and found no specimens, so the species was declared functionally extinct. Even if some individuals remained, there were no longer enough to recover a viable population. Avocado oil became fashionable in the 2010s as the high-tech cousin of olive oil. It is obtained from the pulp, is rich in monounsaturated fats and vitamin E, and has a very high smoke point, around 482 degrees Fahrenheit in its refined version, which makes it ideal for frying or stir-frying over high heat without burning too quickly. The African wild dog, also called the painted dog, is one of the most efficient hunters on the planet, capable of coordinating as a pack with strategies that seem straight out of a military manual. However, it is on the brink of extinction. It is estimated that only about 6,600 adults remain, of which only about 1,400 are mature individuals, scattered across a few dozen fragmented subpopulations. The Istanbul Modern Museum opened in December 2004 as Turkey's first modern and contemporary art museum, housed in an old port warehouse in the Karaköy area, overlooking the Bosphorus. Its opening coincided with the European Union summit, where Turkey's potential accession was being discussed, using the museum as a modern calling card for the country. 17,500 people visited it in its first week and around 500,000 in its first year. The axolotl, that amphibian emoji face that never completes its metamorphosis, is practically cornered in real life. Estimates range from 50 to 1,000 adults in the wild, almost all in the canals of Xochimilco in Mexico City. Urban sprawl filled in and polluted lakes. Invasive fish like tilapia and carp were introduced, which eat their eggs, and the water's becoming warmer due to climate change and urbanization, disrupting the balance of their habitat. The extension of Tate Modern in London, opened as Switch House in 2016, added 60% more exhibition space with a pyramidal brick tower designed by Herzog de Meuron. It's not just more rooms. There are floors dedicated to performance, immersive installations, educational spaces, and a panoramic terrace overlooking the Thames. Barringer Crater, also called Meteor Crater, is like an open-air laboratory for understanding what happens when a space rock strikes a planet. Located in Arizona, it measures about 0.75 miles in diameter and around 558 to 591 feet deep, and was formed about 50,000 years ago when an iron meteorite about 98 to 164 feet in diameter struck with such force that it excavated some 100 years 75 million tons of rock. It is one of the best preserved impact craters in the world. NASA's Stereo mission launched two identical spacecraft in 2006 and sent them orbiting the sun on opposite sides, like 3D cameras surrounding a campfire. Thanks to this stereoscopic view, scientists were able to see for the first time how coronal mass ejections swell and break off, improving the ability to anticipate solar storms that can fry satellites and power grids on Earth. The Oslo Opera House opened in 2008 with a design by the firm Snøhetta that literally invites you to walk on the roof, a white marble ramp that descends to the sea and transforms the building into a giant public square. Beneath this sloping surface lie halls with luxurious acoustics and a structure designed to withstand snow, ice, and the thousands of tourists who climb it every year just to take the photo, walking on the Opera House. The Brigadeiro originated in Brazil in the 1940s using condensed milk, cocoa, and butter, when World War II rationing made more elaborate desserts difficult to obtain. It became so popular at parties that today there are specialized Brigadeiro shops that sell them in versions filled with pistachio, Nutella, or passion fruit, and in countries like the United States, they are offered as Brazilian truffles at weddings and high-end catering events. The NFT boom exploded in 2021 when Beeple's digital artwork, Every Day's the First 5,000 Days, sold for $69.3 million at Christie's, an unprecedented feat for a JPG file with a token on the blockchain. From then on, GIFs, tweets, and collections of generative images sold for millions of dollars. The Kia, an alpine parrot from New Zealand, surprised scientists when it demonstrated an understanding of probability, something previously only observed in great apes. In experiments, he chose the statistically most favorable option for obtaining food, in addition to solving puzzles as a team, while in real life he's famous for dismantling tourists' cars and stealing their food with the coordination of an organized gang. The Musée de la Civilisation de Québec became known for exhibitions that treat pop culture with the same seriousness as classical history. It has dedicated shows to Tintin, Quebec comics, and even facial recognition projects that find you a doppelganger in 2,000-year-old sculptures. Bibimbap, a Korean bowl of rice with stir-fried vegetables, meat, and spicy gochujang, went from being a home-cooked meal to a star dish of K-food thanks to the rise of K-pop and TV series. Today it appears on vegan menus, fast casual menus, and airline menus because it adapts easily. You can serve it on a hot stone, cold to go, or in a healthy version without losing that final moment of mixing everything together into a delicious chaos. Amazon Web Services started in 2006, offering two services that seem simple but change computing: S3 for cloud file storage and EC2 for renting servers by the hour. What previously required buying physical racks and setting up server rooms became a click in a web console, and this infrastructure as a service model ended up being the foundation for thousands of apps, startups, and streaming services that we use every day. The Messenger mission was the first to orbit Mercury in 2011, and contrary to what was expected of a planet so close to the Sun, confirmed that its perpetually shadowed craters contain deposits of water ice mixed with organic compounds. Furthermore, It revealed that Mercury had an intense volcanic past and that its magnetic field is offset to the north, details that forced a rewriting of its history as a rocky world much more active than previously thought. The western chimpanzee, Pan troglodytes virus, was reclassified as critically endangered after studies showed that its population declined by more than 80% in just a few decades due to hunting, the pet trade, disease, and deforestation. Today it remains in only 8 West African countries, and its protection involves armed patrols, agreements with local communities, and even projects that genetically trace the origin of confiscated chimpanzees to dismantle trafficking networks. The acai bowl, made with the pulp of a small, antioxidant-rich Amazonian berry, went from being a surfer's breakfast in Brazil to becoming the Instagram breakfast. By 2020, it was already listed among the most viral foods of the decade. Combinations with granola, fruit, nut butters, and colorful toppings made it perfect for photos. Leonardo DiCaprio's The Revenant was filmed almost entirely with natural light in remote landscapes of Canada and Argentina, with temperatures reaching -13 degrees Fahrenheit and a crew that had to walk for hours carrying equipment on their shoulders to areas untouched by human activity. This artistic decision made the shoot famous for being almost a logistical nightmare. Days lost due to the weather, a ballooning budget, and a Leonardo DiCaprio who ended up sleeping in furs, wading into icy rivers, and eating raw liver on camera. Songdo in South Korea is a city built from scratch on 1,500 acres reclaimed from the sea. Conceived as a smart city laboratory, it has sensors that measure traffic and air quality, a pneumatic system that suctions garbage directly from buildings, and a network of parks and bike paths designed so that 90% of daily tasks are within a 15-minute walk or bike ride. However, despite the multi-million-dollar investment, the city has been criticized for feeling overly planned and cold, as if technology arrived before the daily lives of its inhabitants. In Japan, there is a rather strange snack called armpit onigiri. Young women shape the rice balls with their armpits, inspired by a scene from a famous manga. Although it may seem unhygienic, it has become a trend, and many are trying it as if it were a cultural eccentricity. Would you dare? The strawberry moon is a phenomenon that occurs when the full moon is at its closest point to Earth. Although many believe the name comes from its pink color, it's actually related to the strawberry harvest season. In Austria, you'll find the Schlossbergrutsche, or the Slide Graz, the world's tallest underground water slide. With a 210-foot drop and a 558-foot descent, it's the perfect attraction for adrenaline junkies. It's not just a ride, but an extreme underground experience. When vinyl-wrapped cars are exposed to intense heat, a curious effect occurs. Air bubbles form beneath the surface. This is because the material expands with high temperatures. The result is cars that look like inflatables on wheels. Cuban Eric Hernandez achieved an impressive world record in ball control. He kept the ball in play for over 3 hours without dropping it, while seated and with extra weight on his ankles. Manette Bailey, a 102-year-old woman, decided to celebrate her birthday in an unusual way by skydiving. From an altitude of 6,889 feet, she broke records as the oldest person to do so in the UK. Her bravery inspired thousands around the world. The stones we see on train tracks serve a vital function. They are called railway ballast and are used to absorb vibrations, keep the tracks aligned, and allow water drainage. Without them, the rails would deform under the weight of the trains. Ida is a robot that paints, writes poetry, and has already sold more than $1 million worth of art. She's more talented than many humans. This British android has cameras in her eyes, a robotic arm, and AI algorithms that turn what she sees into sketches and paintings. She has exhibited in museums, even painted a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, and rubs shoulders with flesh and blood artists. Her works are auctioned for thousands of dollars, while many humans can barely draw a stick figure. The future of art is half silicon, half existentialism. In Japan, they created a flying bike that hovers for 40 minutes. We're almost in Back to the Future. The idea is simple. They took a motorcycle, attached giant drone propellers, and said, "What if we make it fly?" The result is a kind of flying broomstick, a Japanese millionaire version that can stay in the air for several minutes. Don't expect to be cruising through the sky just yet. It's more of a futuristic demo than everyday transportation. A man in South Africa sleeps with cheetahs to build trust. And it wasn't even on the menu yet. This handler decided that the best way to work with wild cheetahs was to have sleepovers with them. He shares his bed with felines that can run at more than 60 miles per hour and have teeth the size of his fingers. With so much time spent together, he ends up being one of the pack, only without spots. He doesn't use an alarm to wake them up, though. A deep purr and he's already sitting on the bed. A girl was saved from a bear thanks to listening to Rihanna. The music literally saved her life. She was walking along peacefully with her headphones on when she saw a bear coming straight toward her. Instead of panicking, she turned up the volume and let Rihanna do her thing. The noise and her decidedly unappealing eating habits convinced the bear to find another snack. Moral of the story: never underestimate the power of a pop diva as a wildlife repellent. In Romania, a man balanced 319 wine glasses on his head and danced. A world record without spilling a single one. Imagine having to walk with one glass on your head. Now multiply that by 319 and add music and an audience watching. The guy stacked the glasses into an impossible tower and moved as if he were in legendary balancing mode. Not a single toast went flying. If this doesn't deserve applause, or better yet, a complimentary glass of wine, I don't know what does. A ballerina performed ballet in Antarctica on a ship. Frozen and epic art. While most people there are only thinking about not freezing to death, she decided to put on her pointe shoes and dance among icebergs. The setting: a boat moving, polar winds, and an endless white landscape. Every turn seemed to carry the risk of slipping and falling into the icy water. But the contrast is striking. Utter delicacy in one of the most hostile places on the planet. In Croatia, there's a heart-shaped island called Galeshnjak, ideal for weddings and romantic selfies. From the air, it looks like a heart emoji lying in the Adriatic Sea, perfect for saying "I love you" without words. It has no big cities or amusement parks. Its appeal lies in its shape and scenery. Some couples fly over it in small planes just for the aerial photo of the century. Basically, it's the geographical version of a Valentine's Day card. There are concrete mattresses that protect coastlines from erosion. Tough but useful. They're like giant blankets made of interlocking concrete blocks laid on the sand or the seabed. At first glance, they look like something out of Minecraft, but they're designed so the waves crash on them and don't erode the coastline. Over time, seaweed and fish use them as homes, so they end up being luxury condominiums for marine life, of course. A Portuguese priest is also a DJ. He plays electronic music right in the middle of Mass. By day, he wears a cassock, gives sermons, and distributes blessings. By night, he swaps the sensor for a mixing console and mixes beats. His idea is to connect with young people using what moves them most: music. So instead of solemn choirs, you hear drops and bass that make you say "Amen" and turn it up. At the same time, God willing, the dance floor is never empty. A mother used AI to turn her children's mess into a news report. The result? A record-breaking cleanup. She recorded the chaos of their room and asked the AI to narrate it as if it were a dramatic news report. Toys, kidnapped. Clothes, missing. The floor, uninhabitable. The kids were in total chaos mode and rushed to tidy up and change the headlines. The next generation isn't afraid of punishment. They're afraid of appearing in a special edition of Disorder News. For just $35, you can sleep in a capsule hotel in Japan, mini with USB ports and mandatory silence, ideal for introverts. Each capsule is like your own personal mini spaceship. Mattress, light, outlets, sometimes a TV, all compressed into a few cubic feet. There are no windows, but there are curtains and absolute peace, as long as you respect the golden rule: zero noise. The hallways look like giant bread baskets filled with sleeping humans. Perfect if you want to save money, recharge your batteries, and avoid awkward conversations. Liuba, a 50,000-year-old baby mammoth, was found so well preserved that she looks like she's asleep. She was found in the Siberian permafrost with her skin, trunk, and even stomach contents intact. Scientists went wild. It's like having an instruction manual for what a baby mammoth looked like. Some even dreamed of cloning her Jurassic Park style, but for now, she's only useful for studying the past, not for setting up a prehistoric zoo. Even so, it's the longest nap ever. An earthquake-proof bed closes like a safe and stores water, food, and a rescue signal. When it detects a strong tremor, poof, it folds you inwards as if the earth were swallowing you, but safely. Inside, there's a mattress, supplies, and even systems to call for help, all designed to hold you until rescuers arrive. It's kind of terrifying to look at, but in an earthquake, it's basically a high-tech turtle mode. Sleeping and surviving have never been so intertwined. Ben Allen created a giant 12-foot NES controller. You need 2 people just to play. The controller is so enormous that one button is almost the size of a table. To jump with Mario, you literally have to run to the A button. It's a mix between a video game and CrossFit. You end up sweaty, but happy. It's 80s nostalgia taken to the physical extreme, ideal for showing off who's really good with controllers. Cleopatra married her brothers to maintain power, and although she was an Egyptian queen, she was of Greek blood. In her family, the family tree was more like a roundabout. They married among themselves to ensure the throne remained within the dynasty. She belonged to the Ptolemies, descendants of one of Alexander the Great's generals, so her origins were Greek even though she ruled Egypt. She spoke several languages and knew how to navigate politics better than many emperors. Drama, power, and family strategies worthy of an old-fashioned soap opera. In China, they created the Rotundbot police robot, spherical and armed with gas. BB-8 with a badge. It's a kind of technological ball that patrols stations and airports. Rolling on its own, it has cameras, sensors, and can identify suspicious situations while strolling around as if nothing were amiss. If things get rough, it has speakers to give orders and gas to deter unruly citizens. It's so round you'll want to take a selfie, but it's best to behave yourself just in case. By 2026, China plans to have 1,000 humanoid robots assisting in homes and factories. A real future. The idea is for these androids to perform repetitive, heavy, or dangerous tasks, from carrying boxes to helping with household chores. Tech companies are already competing to create the perfect employee that doesn't complain, doesn't ask for vacations, and recharges by plugging it in. For now, they walk a little strangely, but every year they look more like extras in a science fiction movie, only in real life. The bionic bee is a robotic bee that can pollinate in emergencies. High-tech flight. Developed by the company Festo, it measures about 9 inches and weighs just 34 grams, with a motor, batteries, and sensors in a tiny body. It can fly in coordinated swarms, like an army of cyborg bees. The idea is that, one day, they will help where real bees are lacking due to pollution or climate change. Think of them as tiny drones with insect-like souls saving crops. Motorized pants already exist. The M-Go gives you over 40% more strength when climbing hills. Bionic legs activated. On the outside, they look like ordinary pants, but they conceal a soft exoskeleton with motors and sensors. When they detect you're climbing stairs or an incline, they give you a little push, making you feel like an Olympic athlete without a gym. Ideal for delivery drivers, cyclists, or people who live in hilly cities. Basically, it's like putting your calves in turbo mode. In Turkey, a 538 square foot Byzantine mosaic was discovered beneath a hotel. It's almost 1,500 years old and intact. Imagine being on vacation, going to the hotel pool, and discovering that beneath your feet lies a carpet of ancient stones. The mosaic displays geometric figures and decorative scenes so crisp it looks brand new. The archaeologists had to work like surgeons to uncover it without damaging it. The result, the hotel ended up with a museum-quality historic floor. Fontis is a brilliant bottle for cyclists that converts humidity from the air into drinking water using solar energy. It works like a mini fog catcher with technology. Air enters, condenses, and boom, droplets accumulate as drinkable water. Ideal for long rides where there are no kiosks or other people nearby. While you pedal, the sun powers the system, and you watch as the bottle fills itself. It's the closest thing to having the superpower to summon water in the middle of the road. Two twins fought inside the womb, and the ultrasound image went viral. They started their rivalry before they were even born. In the video, they can be seen playfully swatting at each other, as if they were fighting over the best seat. The parents, both surprised and amused, already suspect who will blame whom for starting the fights in childhood. If things were like this before birth, imagine the fights over toys years later. These two were definitely born competitive. In Australia, a cat can perform over 20 tricks. She's faster and more balanced than many humans. Her name is Didja, and she jumps, rolls, gives her paw, rides a skateboard, and even does feline parkour. Her human trained her with patience and treats, proving that cats aren't just professional at ignoring you. Videos show her mastering obstacles like a furry Olympic athlete. Further proof that cats, if they want, can do whatever they please better than us. There's a guitar without strings. The Liber Live C1 uses sensors to play chords with buttons, so forget about tuning and cutting your fingers. It's like having a guitar mixed with a joystick. You press buttons, move your hand, and the technology takes care of the rest. Ideal for learning songs quickly, practicing at night without disturbing anyone, and feeling like a rock star with zero prior experience. Basically, a guitarist in easy mode but with realistic sound. Discover the village of Anosibe Ambohibi, nestled within the crater of an extinct volcano in Madagascar. Some 300 people live surrounded by lush, green walls, like a giant natural salad bowl. They cultivate mainly citrus fruits, and the village is so isolated that reaching it is quite an adventure. It's like a world apart, a peaceful life, literally at the bottom of an extinct volcano. Explore the caves of Granada, where people live inside the mountain with natural air conditioning. In summer they're cool, in winter warm, all thanks to the thickness of the rock that maintains a nearly constant temperature. From the outside, they look like white holes in the hillside. Inside, modern homes with kitchens, sofas, and Wi-Fi. It's like combining caveman life with 21st century comfort. Discover Pule cheese, a gourmet delicacy made with donkey milk and a little goat's milk that can cost over $1,000 per kilo. It's produced in minute quantities in a Serbian reserve, and it takes many liters of milk for just 1 kilo, which is why it's so rare. They say its flavor is somewhat similar to Manchego cheese, with intense notes and a unique texture. It's the kind of cheese you don't cut into cubes, you present it like an edible jewel. Imagine the Yahoo executives in 2000 saying, "Nah, thanks," when they could have bought Google for $1 million. At that time, Google was just a promising search engine, and Yahoo was the king of the internet. Years later, Google dominates the digital world, and Yahoo, well, it exists. It's probably one of the most expensive no, not today buyouts in business history. Meet the town new the Airlife trash can, a bin that looks like a space gadget. It opens, seals, compresses, and lasts up to a month on battery power. This way the trash takes up less space and doesn't smell, as if it were in its own vacuum-sealed capsule. It's perfect for small homes, offices, or people who hate changing the bag all the time. Futurism applied to the least glamorous aspects of the home, but incredibly useful. Discover Lola Roy, the French woman who performs parkour as if she were flying between buildings. One of her wildest jumps was between rooftops, separated by 52 feet, where a mistake is unforgivable. She runs, jumps, and lands with such precision that it seems as if the ground is waiting for her exactly where she chooses. Watching her videos is pure adrenaline without leaving your couch. Think of saffron, that spice that looks like harmless little red threads, but is worth a fortune. It takes around 150000 flowers to obtain 1 kilo because only 3 microscopic threads are extracted by hand from each flower. That's why a kilo can reach $1,000 or more, especially if it's high quality. Every pinch that falls into the pot is basically a mini aromatic ingot. Walk down Rueta Street in Italy, where one section is barely 16 inches wide. It's so narrow that if you pass someone, you practically have to decide who gets squashed against the wall. Just squeezing in with a backpack or large bag is a logistical challenge. It's the perfect spot for that, "Look, I'm almost wider than the street" photo. Listen to Geert Shotru, the guy who whistles better than many people play instruments. His breath control and pitch are so precise that he can perform classical pieces and complicated melodies using only his lips. He's won world whistling championships, where he's judged like a violinist. You close your eyes and think you're hearing a flute until you see him whistle. Meet Jovante Carter and his facial superpower. He can raise his lower lip until it completely covers his nostrils. He held it like that for 1 minute and 2 seconds to achieve an absolutely absurd and wonderful world record. His face looks like it came straight out of a rubber band cartoon. It won't save the world, but it will save the social media algorithm. Discover Scott Berner's feat of taking reverse to another level by driving at around 56 miles per hour in reverse for 1320 feet. Controlling the car like that, while looking in the rearview mirror, is almost like driving a car backward on a racetrack. He achieved an official record without spinning out. After that, parallel parking must seem like a joke. Enter the submerged bike path in the Netherlands, where you'll pedal with the canal water at eye level. The path dips slightly, and the side walls contain the water, so you stay dry while ducks swim alongside you. It's like cycling along the bottom of an empty pool, but with real scenery. Perfect for photos that say, "Look, I'm cycling inside the lake." Discover threading, the Indian hair removal method that uses only tangled cotton to trap and pull out hair with millimeter precision. The esthetician twists the thread over the skin, and the hairs are caught like miniature ribbons. It's ideal for well-defined eyebrows and small areas. An ancient technique that puts many modern beauty devices to shame. Visit the Slenic Prahova salt mine in Romania, a giant underground place that looks like a life-size Minecraft map. The walls have geometric patterns, and the space is so large that there are even sports courts and recreation areas inside. Salty air is considered good for the lungs, so some people go there to breathe it and stroll around. It's like an underground theme park made of salt. Check out what the MSCHF Collective made. A mini bag so microscopic it's smaller than a grain of salt. It can only be seen properly with a special microscope, but it's still sold for over $6,000 as a piece of art fashion. The idea is to mock extreme luxury and paying fortunes for impractical things. It's the concept of a designer bag taken to the extreme of absurdity. Enter the Corpus Museum in the Netherlands and explore a giant human body as if you were a tourist cell. You enter through a leg, ascend through organs and systems, while screens and sounds explain what's happening inside. Everything vibrates, pulsates, and makes digestive noises you wouldn't normally hear so close up. It's a biology class turned educational roller coaster. Try black sapota, a fruit that doesn't look like much on the outside but tastes like chocolate pudding on the inside. When ripe, its pulp becomes dark, creamy, and sweet, perfect for desserts without added sugar. People mix it with milk, vanilla, or cocoa, and it becomes a healthy mousse. It's the most natural way to trick your brain. You eat fruit, but it tastes like dessert. Check out the Titanic pizza that covers the equivalent of 5 tennis courts, made with pieces that fit together like a giant puzzle of dough, cheese, and sauce. Cooking it requires mobile ovens, an army of people, and a lot of logistics. The best part is that all those slices were donated to charity. A world record with a taste of solidarity. Meet the Brazilian skydiver who decided to reforest the Amazon from the air. Instead of just enjoying the free fall, he released some 100 million encapsulated seeds to scatter over deforested areas. The result is a shower of future trees falling from the sky. Skydiving with real ecological impact, adrenaline and reforestation at the same time. Discover quantum stealth, a kind of invisibility cloak developed by Hyperstealth in Canada. It's a material that bends light around whatever it covers, making what's behind it appear blurred or almost disappear, even in infrared. It's not movie magic, but the effect is crazy enough to camouflage people or objects. It's the closest thing we have to a Harry Potter-style cloak, but a military version. Meet Terry Horton, a woman who bought a painting for $5 at a thrift store that could be a Jackson Pollock worth millions. For years, she fought with experts and auction houses to have it recognized as authentic. The estimated value was around $50 million, but she died without selling it. It's the ultimate plot twist, having a scratch hanging in your home that could be worth more than a building. Listen to Schneider, who decided to turn the sounds of his washing machine into a home synthesizer. He records beeps, spins, and clicks, uploads them to his computer, and transforms them into surprisingly good electronic rhythms. Suddenly, the laundry program becomes a dance floor. Of course, if the washing machine breaks down, you might be left without a hit song. Discover the ultimate version of Uber, helicopter rides to avoid brutal traffic jams in some cities and at events. You book the flight, arrive at the heliport, and in minutes you're above all the trapped cars. It's expensive, but the view and the time saved are incredible. It's like going from "I'm late" to "I'm landing like a boss." Discover Mythical Rocket, the person who types 262 words per minute, an insane speed. His fingers move so fast that the keyboard seems like a musical instrument in solo mode. And it's not just spam. He maintains incredibly high accuracy while typing. Watching him makes you want to practice or accept that your destiny is a slow index finger. Learn about the extraordinary life of Michael Tolotos, who spent 82 years in a monastery without ever seeing a woman. He was taken there as a baby and lived isolated on a sacred mountain in Greece, always surrounded only by monks. No television, no social media, no female visitors. His world was pure monastic life. While the planet changed and became filled with technology, he remained in his spiritual bubble. Discover kinball, a sport where the ball is 4 feet in diameter and cannot touch the ground. 3 teams of different colors play at the same time, so it's total chaos. Everyone runs after a giant ball. The serving team names another color, and that team has to prevent the ball from hitting the ground. It's like volleyball mixed with a children's game and improvised choreography. Meet Priscilla Dunstan, the woman who claims to have deciphered the basic language of babies. According to her, sounds like ne, o, or he indicate hunger, sleepiness, or discomfort and are repeated by babies all over the world. Her system aims to help first-time parents better understand their cries. It's like having a little dictionary translating from "I'm crying, baby" to "I'm hungry now." Watch Thor Bjornsson, the mountain, training with his wife. Literally, he holds her like a weight and does squats, presses, and all sorts of exercises. For him, it's training. For her, a kind of romantic roller coaster. When your gym routine includes lifting your partner, the concept of a strong relationship becomes very literal. Discover the bizarre arcades of Japan, where the machines don't give out stuffed animals, but live seafood or other real objects. You operate the claw, and if you succeed, you take home your edible prize. It's a mix of video game, fishing, and supermarket. Of course, every failed attempt stings because you think, there goes my dinner. Meet the holographic head device that attends meetings in your place. It's a kind of totem with a floating 3D head that reproduces your face, gestures, and voice in real time. This way, you can be virtually in the room without leaving your house. Science fiction applied to, I don't want to travel for this meeting. Discover Luke Jerram, the artist who created a 23-foot moon that hangs in museums and galleries around the world. His Museum of the Moon uses real NASA images, so every crater and speck is there, only in a giant version. People walk underneath, take photos, and feel like they're standing in front of a private indoor moon. It's like bringing the night sky into the exhibition hall. Meet Menga, the artist of patience who stacked 1,512 wooden blocks without glue or any tricks. Each piece is positioned with millimeter precision so that the weight is distributed and the tower doesn't fall. A slight tremor or a strong gust of wind, and it would all come crashing down, but it stands firm, defying gravity. It's the ultimate Jenga, taken to a Zen level. Owls camouflage themselves by stretching their bodies to resemble thin branches, and the trick is so good that they look like part of the tree. Some make themselves super thin, pressing their feathers against their bodies and raising those little feather antlers to look like dry twigs. This is how they deceive predators and also gossipy little birds that would give them away by squawking. They are basically feathered ninjas of the forest. In parahawking, paragliders fly alongside trained hawks or vultures, which guide them toward warm air currents. The bird goes ahead, marking the highway of the wind, and the human follows as if they had winged GPS. While the bird receives food as a reward, the pilot gains altitude without expending much energy. It's literally flying by following nature's original flight master. A street drummer grabs a bunch of old buckets and turns them into a concert-level drum set. Each bucket has a different sound: bass drum, tom, snare drum, all created with pure imagination. People walk by wondering, what is that noise? And he ends up recording with his cell phone because it sounds amazing. Clear proof that talent matters more than equipment. In the French Alps, there's a glass platform at 12,139 feet that simulates freefall without you having to jump into the void. They hook you up with harnesses, a strong wind blows, and the transparent floor makes you feel like you're floating over the abyss. Your legs say no thanks, but your brain screams, Instagram photo now. It's an adrenaline, safe version. Sort of. The cat in The Godfather wasn't in the script. Marlon Brando found it wandering around the set and put it on his lap. The feline stole the scene with its purrs, while the mobster talked about shady deals. The cat's sound was so loud that they had to raise Brando's voice in post-production. No plans, no casting. The best extra was a stray cat. Roman Boutin takes ordinary coins and turns them into mini machines with gears that move when you touch them. Some have skulls that open their jaws, others gears that spin like tiny clocks. They look like cursed coins from a steampunk video game. They're so detailed you're afraid of losing one in your pocket next to your regular coins. In Fano, Denmark, the sky fills with giant kites shaped like octopuses, dragons, and other bizarre things. Miles of beach, perfect winds, and hundreds of people controlling strings like cloud tamers. Some kites are so big they look like hot air balloons lying on their sides. It's the kind of festival where you look up at the sky and don't know where to put all the photos. A map shows which YouTube channels earn the most money in each country, according to data from Social Blade. You see the faces of YouTubers, gamers, and people who react to things on a world map full of numbers. It's striking to see how much someone can generate from their bedroom with a camera and a good algorithm. It's the perfect reminder that your teacher was right. The future is on the internet. Euglossini bees look like jewels with wings. Metallic, shiny, almost fantastical. They live in Central and South America and are key to pollinating exotic orchids. The males even collect flower fragrances to attract mates, as if they were wearing luxury perfume. They are the perfect combination of functional insects and dazzling accessories of nature. A keyboard with a secondary touchscreen turns the bottom into an extra mini monitor. You can see shortcuts, blending bars, preview images, or play a video while you type. It's like having two screens in a single piece of crazy hardware. Ideal for those who want to work and procrastinate at the same time without switching windows. The sculpture Karma in New York is a stack of human figures, one on top of the other, covering their eyes. Because of its shape and perspective, from certain angles it appears infinitely tall, as if it were lost in the sky. It plays with shadow and volume to trick the eye and make it look bigger than it is. It's literally see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil transformed into a giant tower. The pearlfish is so shy that it hides inside the rectums of sea cucumbers. Yes, it chose the strangest Airbnb in the ocean, but there it's protected from predators. Sometimes it goes in alone, and other times it shares its apartment with another equally strange fish. Things happen at the bottom of the sea that not even the craziest screenwriters dare to invent. They created a meatball with woolly mammoth DNA, using lab-grown meat mixed with reconstructed genes. It was presented at a museum as an experiment to show the future of cultured meat and the ethical debate surrounding it. Nobody ate it for safety reasons, but everyone looked at it as if it were the Jurassic Park meatball version, science, marketing, and mammoths on the same plate. Sologamy is the trend of marrying oneself. Ring, ceremony, and vows of self-love. Some people dress up, throw parties, and even promise to care for and respect themselves for life. More than a joke, they see it as a symbolic ritual of self-esteem. It's like saying, my most serious relationship is with myself. MSCHF's reversible sneakers can be worn normally or inside out, with the sole facing backward. They're incredibly unusual, like a video game glitch made into a shoe. They attract so much attention that it doesn't matter if they're comfortable. You've already won the conversation starter. Fashion designed to confuse the brain and make Instagram laugh. A Belgian draft horse pulled 18 men in a test of strength that seems straight out of medieval times. These horses are enormous, muscular, and bred to pull incredibly heavy loads. The men strain to resist, and the horse barely seemed to be breaking a sweat. It's like watching a live tractor with a mane. Hypertrichosis is a condition where hair grows almost all over the body, which inspired legends of werewolves. Some people have their face, arms, and torso completely covered in hair, and for centuries they were exhibited in circuses. Today it is understood as an extremely rare genetic disorder, not something monstrous. Science explaining what was once pure myth. There is a garbage island in the Pacific, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, with more than 6,177,63 square miles. And it is not the only one. There are at least 2 other similar accumulations in other oceans. It is not a solid island, but a soup of plastics and debris floating where currents intersect. Even so, it is larger than several countries combined. It is the ugliest reminder of our history with plastic. In the Silent Hill PT demo, a ghost named Lisa follows you for part of the game, but you don't see her until certain terrifying moments. Fans discovered through hacks that the ghost model sticks to your back the whole time, digitally breathing down your neck. This explains why the game feels so unsettling even when nothing seems to be happening. Psychological fear at the "I don't want to turn my back to the screen" level. Today, AI can create hyper-realistic videos, like a cat cooking or people who never existed speaking perfectly to the camera. The models generate images, voices, and movements so believable that it's hard to distinguish what's real. This opens creative doors and also problems of misinformation and deception. Welcome to a world where saying, "I saw it on video," no longer proves anything. Pinocchio doesn't just lie. His name comes from Pino, pine, and Accio, or Uccio, and is interpreted as little wooden head in Italian. It's a nickname that fits perfectly with a boy made of boards and nails. His creator, Collodi, probably didn't imagine that this name would become a worldwide synonym for a growing nose. Today, if you say Pinocchio, everyone understands charming liar. A Mexican man invented a pavement that repairs itself with water. Cracks are filled thanks to a special chemical reaction. Instead of tearing it up and repaving it, the material heals itself when it rains or gets wet. It won international awards for the sustainability of the idea. It's like having streets with a self-repair button activated by a storm. In Smooth Criminal, it's said that the heartbeats heard at the beginning come from Michael Jackson's actual heart, recorded with a studio stethoscope. It's a tiny detail that adds tension before the bass and drums kick in. The result is an intro that sounds like a mafia hospital soundtrack. Vital rhythm taken to the highest artistic level. A bridge of coins held together without glue is supported by pure physics. Each coin rests on the other at just the right angle. When you assemble it, it seems like it could all collapse at any moment, but the pressure distributes itself and it stays firm. It's like a mini Roman arch, pocket-sized version. Patience, a steady hand, and a lot of faith in gravity when used correctly. Oreo Panda cookies reveal patterns when you dip them in warm milk. Faces or hidden drawings appear on the cookie. It's a little detail designed for children and curious adults to play with while they're snacking. Between bites, you're basically doing cookie archaeology. Science, sugar, and surprise all in one cup. Xiaozhai Tiankeng in China is the deepest sinkhole in the world, reaching depths of up to 2,171 feet. It's so large that an entire skyscraper, like the Empire State Building, could fit inside with room to spare. Inside, it has its own forest and microclimate, like a hidden world beneath the surface. It's the geological version of a portal to the Earth's core. They say cell phones have up to 30 times more bacteria than a toilet seat because we touch them all day long and almost never clean them. We take them to the bathroom, on public transport, to bed, and then we put them to our faces. They're basically microbe sponges with touch screens. After reading this, that disinfectant wipe doesn't sound so exaggerated anymore. Jeremy Harper decided to count to 1 million out loud, and it took him 89 consecutive days to achieve it. He did it by streaming online, sleeping very little, and organizing his life around the numbers. From 1 to 1000000, all recorded with almost superhuman patience. It's the ultimate challenge for anyone who thinks counting sheep is boring. In 1971, Alan Shepard took an improvised golf club aboard Apollo 14 and played a couple of shots on the moon. Thanks to the low gravity, the ball flew much farther than on Earth, even though he could barely move in his spacesuit. It's the most iconic swing in the history of space sports, golf, but NASA style. Tigers sneeze with a loud but surprisingly adorable noise, a mix of a mini roar and a giant feline achoo. Sometimes they do it to clear their noses of dust or bugs, other times out of sheer irritation. If you hear it up close, you laugh. If you remember it's coming from a 441-pound predator, you back away quickly. Someone built a working sewing machine using only Lego pieces, gears, and a lot of patience. The invention actually sews fabric, stitch by stitch, powered by tiny toy motors. It's engineering at the level of a child genius and a proud seamstress mom. A perfect demonstration that Legos are basically creative laboratory pieces. Harihar Fort in India has almost vertical staircases carved into the rock, resembling a wall with embedded steps. Climbing them is like rock climbing with a built-in ladder and breathtaking views all around. Many tourists climb using their hands and feet, grabbing onto whatever they can. It's the kind of place where you look down and rethink your vacation choices. In Japan, zoo and aquarium staff conduct escape drills dressed as escaped animals. Bears, sea lions, giant penguins. Other employees practice how to contain the animals, calm the public, and act quickly. From the outside, it looks ridiculous and cool at the same time. But behind the cosplay is serious training for real emergencies. The jaguarundi is a wild cat that looks like a cross between an otter and a ferret, and its sounds are more like a bird than a meow. Its body is long, its legs short, and its face slender, like a feline with a snake-like appearance. It lives in the Americas and often goes unnoticed because it's so elusive. It's the cat you unlock just when you thought you'd seen them all. Alex Roca completed a marathon with a 76% physical disability due to cerebral palsy, becoming the first person to achieve this feat with that level of disability. He did it in Barcelona, using an adapted training bike and a will that knows no limits. His motto is, "You set your own limits," and he backs it up with every sporting challenge. He is pure human motivation. The dwarf elephants of Sri Lanka barely reach about 5 feet in height at the shoulder, like a compact version of a regular elephant. They retain their trunks and tusks, but in a reduced package. Even so, they still weigh enough that you wouldn't want one in your living room. They are proof that even giants have a mini version. In Taupo, New Zealand, there's a McDonald's with a real DC-3 airplane converted into a dining room. You order your combo meal at the regular restaurant and then go eat inside the plane, with tables where passenger seats used to be. It's considered one of the most original McDonald's in the world. You eat fries while looking at the cockpit as if you were the co-pilot of a Big Mac. The box turtle has a naturally hinged shell, which allows it to close almost like a safe. When it feels threatened, it tucks in its head, legs, and tail, and click. It's completely sealed. Many predators are left with a round, inedible rock between their paws. It's the biological version of lock mode. Ruellia tuberosa seeds explode when rain falls on them. The capsule bursts open, scattering seeds in all directions. It's their way of traveling without legs or wings, using the rain as a catapult. If you see it in slow motion, it looks like plant fireworks. Every storm is a launching party for baby plants. Hair prostheses are handmade, glued strand by strand onto molds of leather or special materials. The result is a carpet of hair so detailed that it mimics cowlicks, receding hairlines, and natural density. It's then fitted to the client's head as if it were their own scalp. It's pure craftsmanship at the service of the mirror. Abby, the dog from I Am Legend, is actually named Abby and today lives a peaceful and pampered life, retired from Hollywood. After accompanying Will Smith in one of the saddest movies with a dog, she stayed with a family that adores her. She occasionally appears on social media and in interviews, reminiscing about her past as a canine star. A happy ending for the most mourned four-legged actress in film history. At Disney California, the Mickey's Fun Wheel, now Pixar Pal Around, looks like an innocent giant carousel until you climb into the gliding gondolas. These gondolas travel on internal rails and swing like pendulums as the wheel turns. So you go from "what a lovely view" to "why did I eat breakfast?" It's like combining a Ferris wheel, a swing, and a roller coaster into a single toy. Fun and a little scare in 9 minutes of spinning. Discover Spain's Instagram building, La Muralla Roja in Calpe, a red and pink labyrinth of staircases and courtyards that practically beg to be photographed every few feet. Its geometric architecture and vibrant colors have made it one of the most photographed buildings in the country. It looks like something out of a video game or a scene from Squid Game, but it's a real apartment complex with sea views. It's the ultimate dream for any aesthetic feed. Hungary went so far as to issue the highest denomination banknote in history, 100 trillion pengus, actually 100 quintillion, a 1 followed by 20 zeros. It was so much money that it was practically worthless due to the brutal hyperinflation of 1945 to 1946. It was enough for little more than a loaf of bread, but as a numerical anecdote, it's a true financial statistic. Imagine trying to count that kind of money one by one. A lightning storm in Norway left a heartbreaking scene. A single bolt killed more than 300 reindeer instantly on a plateau. The animals were huddled together when the discharge traveled across the wet ground and struck them all. The photos look like something out of an apocalyptic movie, but they are simply nature unleashed. A brutal reminder that the weather is not to be trifled with. The white bellbird has the loudest cry in the bird world. Up to 125 decibels, louder than a chainsaw next to you. The male climbs onto a branch, puffs out his facial flap, and yells to the female, "Can you hear me now?" The crazy thing is, he sings right next to her, so the romance comes with a risk of eardrum damage. Love at full volume. Meet Ray, the unicorn dog. Due to a birth accident, she lost an ear, and the remaining one moved to the center of her head. The result, a golden retriever with a single horn-like ear who went viral. She lives with a family that adores her, and on social media, she's practically an official unicorn princess. Different, adorable, and totally the star. The movie Ratatouille is named after the famous French stew of baked vegetables: tomato, zucchini, eggplant, and the rest. In the film, this humble dish is transformed into the star recipe that makes a bitter critic weep with nostalgia. Thus, the name blends home cooking, a chef mouse, and a play on words with ratatouille, mouse, recipe, and reputation. Controlled implosion is basically making a building deflate inward, like a sandcastle collapsing in slow motion. Experts place explosives in strategic columns and detonate them in a perfectly choreographed sequence. From the outside, you watch the concrete giant fold in on itself in seconds, raising a cloud of dust worthy of an action movie. Engineering with a guaranteed dramatic ending. Bionic prostheses with myoelectric sensors read the electrical signals from your muscles and translate them into almost real finger, hand, or arm movements. If you think, close your hand, the prosthesis translates it into action. Some even have programmable grips for holding a cup, typing, or using a cell phone. It's the closest thing we have to superhero arms in real life. The SLJ 900/32 is a about 640-ton Chinese monster that builds bridges as if it were assembling giant Lego bricks. It moves along the viaduct, lifts the enormous beams, and deposits them with the precision of a robotic surgeon. It's so long it looks like a building on wheels. When you see it working, you understand that modern bridges are basically engineering marvels. The anteater's tongue can measure up to about 24 inches, thin and sticky like a tape measure with glue. It darts it in and out incredibly fast in tunnels full of ants and termites, like an organic vacuum cleaner. It doesn't have teeth, so its superpower is that crazy tongue. It's the king of all-you-can-eat insects. The Senecio peregrinus plant looks like something an artist would draw. Its plump leaves are shaped like tiny dolphins leaping. Hanging in a pot, it resembles a cascade of little green dolphins in the middle of an aquatic show. It's so cute that many people want it just to show it off in photos. Gardening level, my plant is cuter than yours. In Madagascar lives the fossa, an elegant predator that looks like a mix of giant cat, mongoose, and mini puma. It's the largest carnivore on the island and the terror of lemurs, which it hunts by climbing trees as if they were nothing. It moves with a feline grace that's deceiving. It's all muscle and claws. Kombucha is a sweetened tea that's fermented with a much-loved gelatinous monster, the SCOBY, a colony of bacteria and yeast. This living pancake consumes the sugar and creates a tangy, bubbly drink full of probiotics. It looks like a crazy kitchen experiment, but it's a true star of the health and wellness world. It's basically hipster soda with a scientific basis. Andrea Love builds entire worlds out of wool. She creates felt characters and animates them in stop motion, frame by frame. Each movement requires manually arranging these fluffy figures, so her videos are hours of work concentrated into a few seconds of magic. Her animations feel soft and warm, like watching a woven dream. Textile art in cinematic mode. Valentina Vasileva was the supermom of the 18th century. According to records, she gave birth to 69 children. We're talking about 16 sets of twins, 7 sets of triplets, and 4 sets of quadruplets, all in 27 pregnancies. Guinness World Records holds the record for the most children born to a single woman. Her life was basically pregnancy, birth, repeat. The Lumi watch looks like a science fiction gadget. Instead of a screen, it projects the interface directly onto your arm. You slide your finger across your skin to open apps, as if your body were a living tablet. It uses a mini projector and sensors that detect where you touch. It's the first step toward becoming elegant cyborgs. Bricklaying competitions are like the Olympics of bricks. Teams compete to see who can build walls the fastest, straightest, and neatest. There are rules, judges, and a stopwatch, and the participants work at a speed that defies physics. You end up seeing a perfect wall built in minutes. It's a visual satisfaction for lovers of before and after photos. In the Bodhi tribe of Ethiopia, men compete to gain weight like crazy to win honor and prestige. For months, they drink mixtures of blood and cow's milk to achieve an XXL belly before the Ka-El festival. The one who ends up the roundest takes the glory of the village, even if they return to their normal weight afterward. In that corner of the world, a belly is a trophy. Cano Lopez is a master of brick-vaulted staircases, a traditional technique using thin bricks that seem to hold up almost by magic. Its staircases seem to float, perfect curves without tons of concrete. Each step is meticulously designed to distribute weight. It's architecture that feels like magic. Aria is a humanoid robot that speaks, provides companionship, and learns thanks to AI, as if a character from a futuristic film had been taken and placed in your living room. It can converse, recognize people, and adapt over time. Its function ranges from social assistant to tech companion, a little unsettling, but incredibly fascinating. At the San Andres Cholula Kite Festival, the sky fills with giant kites that look like floating murals. Families and artists compete for the most colorful and creative design, from dragons to giant mandalas. The wind becomes an art gallery, and each gust boosts the creator's self-esteem. It's pure joy with string and paper. The Great Mechanical Elephant in Nantes is a 39-foot-tall colossus that walks among the people like a fantasy creature. You can climb aboard and ride on its back as it moves its trunk and ears and exhales steam as if it were breathing. It weighs about 52 to 53 tons. It's half sculpture, half attraction, half steampunk dream. Yes, 3 halves, because it's enormous. Ekaterina Sisoeva creates 3D cars and paintings that seem to leap off the canvas. You look at her work and swear the car is about to take off. She plays with perspective and shadows to mercilessly deceive the eye. While still in her early 20s, she's already making waves on social media and in galleries. The fire extinguishing balls are balls that you hang or place near risk areas, and if a flame touches them, boom, they explode in a controlled manner. When they explode, they release an extinguishing powder that puts out the fire in seconds without you having to get close. They're like fire grenades, but cool. A small gadget with a huge effect. Ivan Zivkovich dedicates himself to taking stunning close-ups of live insects, revealing eyes, wings, and hairs you never noticed. His macro photography transforms a simple fly into a gorgeous science fiction monster. Thanks to his lens, the small world looks gigantic and spectacular. After seeing it, even an ant looks like a professional model. A Chinese printer combines photography and 3D printing to create ultra-realistic models from simple images. You give it a photo of a person, and it returns a miniature statue of them, full of details, from clothing to expression. It's like creating a physical avatar, a collectible figure version. The YouTube channel Yeso Habana is the Bible of creative plastering. They show how to make moldings, reliefs, and decorations that look like palace art, but made with plaster and a trowel. It's mesmerizing to see how a 3D design appears on a flat wall with just patience and technique. After watching it, you'll want to plaster your entire house. In the Bering Sea, more than 10 billion snow crabs disappeared in just a few years. The population collapsed to historic lows in 2021, and in 2022, the entire fishing season in Alaska was closed for the first time. There simply weren't enough crabs left to sustain the industry. Scientists attribute this to a marine heat wave in 2018 to 2019 that heated the seabed, accelerated the animals' metabolism, and literally caused them to starve to death, devastating the economy of entire communities like Street Paul, where fishing was almost the only source of income. The Grand Canyon seems indestructible, but its Achilles heel is an old pipe. The Trans-Canyon Waterline, laid in the 1960s along some 12 miles of canyon, has broken dozens of times, forcing the cancellation of thousands of hotel and campsite reservations due to a lack of drinking water. The National Park Service is investing some $208 million to replace it, so it can continue providing water to some 5-6 million visitors and 2,500 residents a year. Without this pipeline, the most famous viewpoint in the world would have to run dry, not due to a geological disaster, but simply from thirst. NASA's Juno mission launched in 2011 and arrived at Jupiter in 2016 to orbit it at absurdly low altitudes, just a couple thousand miles above the clouds. Their data revealed that the bands of clouds and storms are not just surface paint. They extend to depths of about 1,860 miles, and that the Great Red Spot, the famous reddish storm, has roots that reach hundreds of miles inland. Bulletproof coffee is marketed as the magic potion for the hyper-productive entrepreneur. Coffee mixed with butter and MCT oil, nearly 230 calories per cup, and about 21 grams of saturated fat. Its creator, Dave Asprey, presented it as brain fuel, capable of providing stable energy, suppressing hunger, and helping to burn fat. But scientific reviews find little solid evidence of these benefits and point out that such a high consumption of saturated fat can raise cholesterol and displace a complete, nutritious breakfast. When the Dawn spacecraft arrived at Ceres in 2015, it encountered an enigma: incredibly bright patches in the Occator crater, as if someone had turned on spotlights in a dark world. Subsequent analysis showed that these areas are covered in salts, primarily sodium carbonate, deposited by salt water that rose from a subterranean ocean, evaporated, and left a white crust. The leatherback turtle is a giant living fossil. It can measure over 6 feet and weigh more than 1,300 pounds, and yet it lives on the edge of the abyss. It is the deepest diving sea turtle, with records of over 4,200 feet, while chasing jellyfish on migrations that cross entire oceans. But its main enemy is not the depths but us. Accidental catches in fisheries, looting of nests, plastics that they mistake for food, and beach loss have caused some Pacific populations to decline critically. The King's Speech turns something as intimate as stuttering into a high-voltage political drama. The film tells the story of how the future King George VI struggles with a speech impediment from childhood and turns to an unorthodox therapist to learn to deliver speeches in the early days of radio, when the monarch's voice could be heard throughout the empire. The film won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 2010 and helped raise awareness of stuttering. In 2010, the announcement of the possible super-Earth Gliese 581 grams in the habitable zone of a nearby star sparked headlines about a second home for humanity. But subsequent analysis of the data concluded that the signal was likely an artifact and that the planet, as described, does not exist. The Grauer's gorilla, one of the world's largest primates and endemic to eastern Congo, has suffered a silent collapse. Recent estimates indicate that its population plummeted by around 77–80% in a single generation, dwindling to just a few thousand individuals due to poaching, illegal mining, and decades of armed conflict in the region. Gyoza, the crescent-shaped Japanese dumpling, has gone from humble side dish to global freezer star. Japanese brands like Ajinomoto, the leading gyoza seller in Japan and France, have begun flooding supermarkets in Europe and the United States with Hane-style versions, crispy, with a golden skirt that forms in the pan, and juicy fillings of pork or chicken with cabbage and garlic. The combination of easy 10-minute preparation and restaurant-quality flavor has made these dumplings a viral snack. In southern Morocco, the so-called Grand Canyon of the Fishermen is a dry, reddish gorge lost between mountains and desert, where trekkers can walk for hours without seeing a single village or the shadow of a tree. Some 4x4 routes and expeditions market it as the Little Grand Canyon of the Sahara. Narrow passages, walls that close off the sky, and nights where the only sound is the wind whipping against the rock. Kombucha has gone from being a somewhat hippie-ish homemade drink to a symbol of modern wellness. Starting in 2010, it began to invade the refrigerators of third-wave coffee shops and organic supermarket shelves, thanks to the obsession with probiotics and happy gut microbiota. Today, it drives a market worth hundreds of millions of dollars a year, with brands experimenting with ginger, hops, activated charcoal, and flavors designed to resemble a cocktail more than a fermented tea. The red-eyed tree frog, with its bright green body and those red orbs that look like lit headlights, has become the face of endangered biodiversity in Central America. It is extremely sensitive to deforestation and the pollution of rivers and wetlands. So when it disappears from an area, it's a warning sign that the ecosystem is collapsing. In 2000, the British Museum opened its covered Great Court, designed by Norman Foster, an interior courtyard buried beneath a sea of glass and steel surrounding the former reading room. That space, once dark and almost neglected, was transformed into a luminous plaza where cultures, languages, and eras converge. Literally the transparent heart of one of the world's most important museums. Falafel, a simple fried chickpea fritter, has become the gateway to Middle Eastern cuisine for millions of people and, at the same time, a lifeline for vegetarians and vegans. Cheap, high in protein, and easy to sell from street carts, it gradually colonized menus in Europe and the United States, becoming a staple as global as the hamburger, but without the meat. The Kilauea volcano in Hawaii had been erupting almost continuously since 1983, but in 2018, it entered such a brutal phase that it destroyed more than 700 homes, wiped an entire bay off the map, and created miles of new coastline with lava. That eruption was the most destructive in the U.S. since Mount Street. Helens in 1980 and left a main crater that grew from 260 feet deep to about 1,640 feet, as if the ground had suddenly collapsed beneath the entire island. At the Palace of Fine Arts in Mexico City, the glass curtain designed by Tiffany is an absolute rarity. More than 1 million pieces of glass that form a landscape of the Central Valley and that rise and fall with a hydraulic system also designed as a fire curtain. Its restoration in the 2000s was almost like open-heart surgery on a piece that has no equivalent in any other theater in the world. Pad Thai was, quite literally, a political invention. During World War II, the Thai government promoted it as a national dish to save rice and build a national identity. What began as an emergency measure ended up becoming one of the most famous street foods on the planet, so global that the word Pad Thai now appears in English dictionaries alongside sushi and pizza. Floating in the middle of the Pacific is something so large it could swallow France 3 times over: the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It is estimated to contain around 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic, with a mass of approximately 800,000 to 100,000 tons. In recent years, a tiny wolf spider from England, the so-called white-knuckled wolf spider, reappeared after not having been seen for 40 years. It measures less than half an inch, lives in sunny clearings, and is so rare that biologists consider it one of the most important wildlife rediscoveries of recent decades in the United Kingdom. In 2016 and again in 2018, the red sands of the Sahara around Ain Sefra, Algeria, awoke covered in snow, with orange dunes topped by about 16 inches of white. Snowfall there isn't impossible. The area is about 3,280 feet above sea level and near the Atlas Mountains. However, it's so rare that the photos seemed fake until NASA and meteorologists confirmed the phenomenon. Capuchin monkeys in certain areas of Brazil select specific stones to use as hammers and anvils, employing them to crack extremely hard nuts or pulverize minerals, leaving behind stone flakes that for years were mistaken for prehistoric human tools. In 2009, Oscar de la Hoya, the Golden Boy, tearfully announced his retirement from boxing after a technical knockout at the hands of Manny Pacquiao in his last fight. A champion with world titles in 6 different weight classes was retiring, one of the few boxers who managed to be both a neighborhood idol and a business magnate with his promotional company, Golden Boy Promotions. The Monterey Submarine Canyon, off the coast of California, is so deep that if the bay were drained, it would reveal an abyss with walls and meanders comparable to the Grand Canyon on land. The banh mi was born from a clash of empires. The French brought the baguette to Vietnam in the 19th century, but people began filling it with pâté, roast pork, pickled carrots and daikon radish, cilantro, chilies, and local sauces, transforming it into something entirely different. By the 1950s, it was already Saigon banh mi, an iconic street food. After the war, the Vietnamese diaspora took it to the US, Australia, and France, and in the 2010s, it exploded in popularity as a cheap gourmet sandwich across the globe. In 2009, Penélope Cruz took to the Oscar stage and became the first Spanish actress to win an award for her role in Vicky Cristina Barcelona. It was the 81st edition in the Best Supporting Actress category, and her speech, beginning in Spanish with "I want to dedicate this award," turned the moment into a direct nod to all Spanish-speaking cinema. When The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers premiered in 2002, the world saw for the first time a 100% digital character act with the nuances of a flesh-and-blood actor, Gollum. Andy Serkis performed all his movements in a motion capture suit, and Weta transformed them into an obsessive, frightened, and tragic creature who wrinkles, trembles, and argues with himself with a naturalness that still impresses today. Modern Sriracha, the one in the clear bottle with the rooster and green cap, is the story of a refugee who, without advertising, created a whole new category of sauce. David Tran, a Vietnamese man who arrived in the US in the 1980s, began producing his version of a Thai sauce in Los Angeles. Huy Fong Foods went from supplying neighborhood Asian restaurants to selling more than 20 million bottles a year and generating hundreds of millions of dollars, with virtually no marketing expenditure. In 2006, the NBA tried to improve the ball by replacing the classic leather with a microfiber ball that, in theory, offered better grip. In practice, the league stars complained that it cracked their fingers, bounced strangely, and was nothing like the ball they had played with their entire lives. The rebellion was so strong that the league reversed course mid-season and returned to leather. Dango is that Japanese dessert of 3 balls on a stick that you see in 1,000 anime, and then one day you find out it actually exists. They are glutinous rice balls with sweet sauces or red bean paste that are eaten at festivals and outings, almost always with tea. Their constant presence in series and movies meant that when Asian food festivals arrived in the West, thousands of fans went out to look for the colorful balls from anime, helping to turn it into a global snack. The Parker Solar Probe is basically a bullet of science fired at the sundae. Launched in 2018, in December 2024, it passed just 3.8 million miles from the solar surface, closer than any human-made object, crossing the corona at about 429,000 miles per hour and becoming the fastest object ever built. It withstands temperatures of up to about 3,272 degrees Fahrenheit, thanks to a carbon shield, while collecting data to solve mysteries such as why the sun's outer atmosphere is hotter than its surface. Georgian cuisine, from the Caucasus country, not the US state, went viral with 2 unforgettable carbohydrate bombs. Khachapuri, a bread boat filled with melted cheese, egg, and butter, and hinkali, enormous dumplings filled with broth that must be bitten with care. Added to this is a tradition of amber wines fermented in underground clay vats, kvevri, that have captivated winemakers and foodies in Europe. The Arctic hare and other cold climate species have an evolutionary magic trick. In winter, they turn white to disappear into the snow. In summer, brown to blend in with the rock and soil. The problem is that, as snow days decrease, they spend more and more time out of place, white against a dark landscape, perfectly visible to foxes, wolves, and predators. For biologists, this is a dramatic visual indicator of how just a few extra days without snow can multiply the risk of death for an entire animal. In 2008, the Taklamakan Desert in northwest China awoke covered in snow. NASA satellites recorded a white layer on the dunes, in a place where it almost never precipitates. The first documented snowfall in the area, barely an inch or two, was enough to transform the arid landscape for hours into something that looked like another planet. Christian Bale not only won the Oscar for The Fighter in 2010, he basically destroyed his own body to do so. He lost over 29 pounds to play Dickie Eklund, a former boxer turned crack addict, immersing himself in his tics, his way of speaking, and even spending weeks with him in bars and gyms in Lowell to copy him down to the last detail. His transformation was so extreme that many viewers didn't even recognize him as the same guy who played Batman. The ocean sunfish, or mola mola, seems like a glitch of nature, a giant fish with a floating head shape that can weigh over 4,400 pounds and grow to more than 10 feet in length, making it one of the heaviest bony fish on the planet. It rises to the surface to sunbathe, revealing its enormous dorsal fin, and is often mistaken for a shark. As a baby, it measures a fraction of an inch and can increase its weight more than 60 million times over its lifetime. In 2010, the Indus River overflowed with such violence that a fifth of Pakistan was submerged. The floods swept away crops, roads, and entire villages, displacing some 20 million people in what the UN described as one of the worst natural disasters in the country's recent history. NASA's InSight mission reached Mars in 2018, and instead of exploring the planet, hovered to listen to its tremors. Its seismometers detected hundreds of Mars quakes and allowed scientists to estimate the size of the core, the thickness of the mantle and crust, as if performing a CT scan of the red planet. It is the mission that confirmed that Mars remains geologically active internally, even though its exterior resembles a frozen desert. The São Paulo Museum of Art is not only famous for its suspended building, In 2015, it recovered Lena Bobardi's radical glass easels, which make the paintings appear to float in the air. This display method, reinstalled as part of a major renovation, breaks with the typical wall laden with frames and transforms the room into a kind of transparent forest of masterpieces from the 4th century BC to modern art. Moonlight not only won the Oscar for Best Picture, it did so after the most chaotic moment in the history of the awards when La La Land was first announced, by mistake, as the winner. Minutes later, live and with the world watching, the error was corrected and it was revealed that the true winner was Moonlight. When Andy Murray won Wimbledon in 2013, he didn't just lift a trophy, he broke a 77-year drought without British champions in the men's singles. He did it against Novak Djokovic in straight sets, under absurd media pressure, while an entire country clung to the hope that, this time, it would be different. The Mojave Desert became a large-scale solar energy laboratory. Giant projects like the Ivanpah plant covered miles of sand with mirrors to concentrate light and generate electricity. But they also faced lawsuits from environmentalists for their impact on desert tortoises, birds, and rare plants. The blobfish, that creature that in photos looks like a sad piece of gum with a face, was voted the ugliest animal in the world in 2013 by a campaign from the Ugly Animal Preservation Society, precisely to draw attention to species that are not very Instagrammable but are threatened. The irony, its melted appearance only appears when it is brought up from the depths, and its gelatinous body is deformed by decompression. In its real habitat, it is much more compact and perfectly adapted to living thousands of feet below the sea. The California condor was nearly extinct in the wild by 1987. Only 27 individuals remained, and all were captured for a desperate breeding program. Reintroduction efforts began in the 1990s, and in 1996, the first condors were released in the Grand Canyon area, where the first wild chick in decades hatched in 2003. Today, there are more than 500 condors in the world, with hundreds soaring freely over California, Arizona, Utah, and Baja California. Hilary Swank literally had to put her body on the line to win her second Oscar for Million Dollar Baby. To portray boxer Maggie Fitzgerald, she trained almost 5 hours a day, gained about 20 pounds of muscle, and ended up with a life-threatening staph infection from a blister on her foot, which she hid from the crew so as not to halt filming. This extreme dedication led her to win the Oscar for Best Actress twice. 3x3 basketball, born on street courts and in urban tournaments, made the most improbable leap. It became an Olympic sport at Tokyo 2020. There it debuted with frenetic 10-minute games on a single hoop, music playing in the background, and a scoreboard that almost never drops below peak tension. What began as a friendly rivalry now awards Olympic medals. Chinese dumplings, a humble food from markets and family homes, became a gourmet obsession in the United States and Europe. Chains like Din Tai Fung brought perfect xiaolongbao, those dumplings filled with soup, to luxury shopping malls around the world. In 2010, a volcano with an almost unpronounceable name, Eyjafjallajökull, paralyzed the world without firing a single bomb. Its ash cloud was enough. The eruption forced the cancellation of nearly 1,000,000 flights in Europe in less than a week, stranding millions of passengers and collapsing global logistics. Suddenly, we understood that a snow-capped peak in Iceland could bring the most advanced air system on the planet to its knees in a matter of hours. The great hammerhead shark looks like a video game monster. It can reach up to about 20 feet in length, and its T-shaped head can immobilize rays as if they were living carpets. But that same grandeur is its downfall. Its fins are highly valued in the shark fin soup market, and the species has suffered declines of over 80% in just a few decades, to the point of being considered critically endangered. In 2010, the French macaron dethroned the cupcake as king of Instagrammable desserts. Pastry chefs like Ladurée and Pierre Hermé transformed it into a luxury item. Small, crisp meringue discs filled with pistachio, rose, or experimental flavors that resemble pastel-colored jewels. The Aral Sea is one of the most brutal examples of what a bad political decision can do. It lost more than 90% of its volume in just a few decades after its rivers were diverted to irrigate cotton during the Soviet era. What was once a sea is now a salt desert filled with stranded ships and villages sickened by toxic dust storms. The Solar Dynamics Observatory, launched in 2010, is essentially a never-blinking eye watching the Sunday. It constantly records ultra-high-resolution images of eruptions, plasma loops, and sunspots, allowing for a better understanding of the storms that can affect satellites, GPS, and power grids on Earth. Senegalese cuisine began to gain global attention thanks to one dish, tiboudien, a rice dish with fish and vegetables that originated in fishing communities on the island of Saint Louis. In 2021, it was inscribed on UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity, and since then, chefs and festivals have used it as a calling card to tell the world. West Africa also has haute cuisine. You just haven't seen it yet. The Lut Desert in Iran looks like a scene from Mars, and it almost is in terms of temperature. NASA satellites measured the highest surface temperature ever recorded there, about 159 degrees Fahrenheit in 2005, and subsequent data suggest even higher peaks. Marion Cotillard voluntarily altered her appearance to become Edith Piaf in La Vie en Rose. She lost weight, changed her posture and gait, shaved parts of her eyebrows, and studied every gesture and breath of the singer. Her transformation was so radical that in 2008 she won the Oscar for Best Actress, only the second time that award had been given for a performance in a language other than English. The mimic octopus seems like a science fiction character, but it is real and lives in the shallow waters of the Indo-Pacific. It is capable of imitating the shape, color, and even the way it moves of up to 10 to 15 different animals, including lionfish, flounders, and venomous sea snakes. It stretches its arms, flattens itself, changes its pattern, and suddenly it is no longer an octopus. It is something else, extremely dangerous, that predators prefer to avoid. The Museum of Islamic Art in Doha, which opened in 2008, was a warning to the world that Qatar wanted to be more than just oil and football. I.M. Pei, the architect of the Louvre Pyramid, spent months traveling through the Arab world to distill the essence of Islamic architecture and condensed it into a geometric building that floats on the sea, connected to the city by a walkway. In 2014, scientists announced the identification of a new species of river dolphin in Brazil, Inia araguaiaensis, the Araguaia river dolphin. What was surprising was not only that it was pink and large, but that it had gone unnoticed until then in a basin where millions of people live. District 9 grabbed science fiction by the throat and shook it. With a budget of around $30 million, cheap for the genre, it achieved hyper-realistic creatures, giant spaceships, and explosions that looked like they belonged in a blockbuster, mixing it all with a mockumentary style and a critique of apartheid in South Africa. The result, an Oscar nomination, instant cult status, and proof that you could make brutally powerful sci-fi outside of Hollywood and without $200 million on the table. The Sydney Opera House nearly became a monumental failure before becoming a global icon. The project's costs spiraled out of control. Architect Jurgen Utzon resigned amidst political infighting, and he left without seeing his masterpiece completed. Today, those white sails covered in over 1 million ceramic tiles seem to freeze the wind over the harbor, and decades later, Utzon received the Pritzker Prize as if architecture itself were telling him, "You were right from the start." The first match of a World Cup was almost humble. France versus Mexico in 1930, with 4,444 people in the stands and freezing cold in Montevideo. But something momentous happened. Frenchman Lucien Laurent scored the first goal in World Cup history, starting a tradition that now moves entire countries, millions of people, and absurd fortunes every 4 years. The checkered flag in racing predates Formula One and even cars. It was used in bicycle races and later appeared documented in the legendary 1906 Vanderbilt Cup in the United States. That simple black and white cloth ended up becoming the global symbol of something we all understand without translation. It's over. You crossed the finish line. The current World Cup trophy, designed by the Italian Silvio Gazzaniga, seems simple, but it's laden with drama. It was born after the old Jules Rimet Cup was stolen and disappeared. That's why the new cup, with two human figures raising the planet, has something almost symbolic about it. It's as if football had to lose its original relic to create an even more mythical icon. Dennis Rodman understood the spectacle better than anyone. To promote his autobiography, Bad as I Want to Be, he appeared in public in a wedding dress, makeup, and a display that challenged the classic masculinity of the sport. More than selling a book, he turned his own image into a manifesto of rebellion against what the NBA expected of its stars. Before becoming The Rock, Dwayne Johnson was a college football player trying to make it at the University of Miami. Injuries cut his career short, and that athletic failure pushed him into wrestling and then Hollywood. Had his NFL career taken off, perhaps the most charismatic actor at the box office today would never have existed. Notre Dame Cathedral survived wars, revolutions, and centuries of dampness, but it almost collapsed in 2019 when a fire devoured its roof and spire before the eyes of the entire world. The shock was so great that hundreds of millions were raised in a short time to restore it, and today the reconstruction combines medieval techniques with modern engineering so that the cathedral is reborn while still bearing its scars. Federico Garcia Lorca, one of the most brilliant poets in the Spanish language, was executed at the beginning of the Civil War. His body has never been found, and his death continues to provoke investigations and disputes. It is impossible to separate his poetry, so full of death, desire, and the people, from the fact that he himself became a symbol of the disappeared under Franco's regime. Rocky didn't come out of nowhere. It was inspired by a real fight between champion Muhammad Ali and the virtually unknown Chuck Wepner, who lasted longer than anyone expected. That fight, where the supposed filler became a moral hero, ignited the spark for the story of cinema's most famous underdog boxer. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech became legendary in part because the phrase that gives it its title wasn't even in the original script. Singer Mahalia Jackson shouted, "Tell them about your dream," and he improvised that part. What emerged from that improvisation became one of the most iconic moments of the 20th century. The mimic octopus, Thaumaktopus mimicus, looks like something out of science fiction. It can adopt the shape and movement of sea snakes, lionfish, jellyfish, and more than a dozen other creatures. It doesn't just change color. It changes its attitude, its silhouette, and its character, becoming one of the ocean's greatest actors. Julius Caesar was kidnapped by pirates when he was young, and instead of begging them, he was offended because the ransom they demanded seemed too low for someone of his stature. During his captivity, he joked that he would crucify them when they released him, and when he was finally free, he raised a small fleet, captured them, and carried out his threat exactly as he had threatened. In Japan, people make reservations months in advance to eat KFC at Christmas. It all started in 1974 with a campaign called Kurisumasu Niwa Kentucky, translated as Kentucky for Christmas, which sold buckets of chicken as if they were the local equivalent of a Christmas turkey. Today, millions of families associate Christmas with the Colonel's bucket of chicken, proof that a good advertisement can rewrite entire traditions. The avocado comes from the Nahuatl word ahuacatl, which was indeed also used as a euphemism for testicle, hence the fame of the joke. But the word doesn't literally mean that. It referred to the fruit of the tree, and later someone joked that guacamole was testicle sauce. Linguists point out that it's more of a charming myth than an actual translation. Cumulonimbus clouds are skyscrapers of steam. They can rise to about 7 to 12 miles high, pushed by air currents so violent that they turn droplets into hail and friction into lightning. When you see one of these anvil-shaped clouds, you're looking at a factory of extreme weather that is brutally connecting Earth, atmosphere, and space. Until the mid-19th century, ice cream was a luxury reserved for the wealthy because preserving ice was extremely expensive. When Jacob Fussell set up the first industrial ice cream factory in Baltimore, he made it a mass pleasure. Suddenly, what was once a dessert for kings could be sold cheaply on the streets of any city. Diogenes of Sinope decided to live in a huge ceramic amphora in the street to demonstrate that one can do without almost everything. When Alexander the Great visited him and offered him anything, Diogenes replied, "Yes, move aside, you're blocking my sun." This absolute contempt for power made him the philosophical punk of antiquity. Popeye was probably the most effective nutritional influencer in history. After he started eating spinach whenever he had a problem, consumption of the vegetable in the United States rose by about 30% in the 1930s. In 1937, a town in Texas erected a statue in his honor to thank him for saving the spinach industry. McDonald's started as a simple barbecue drive-in with an extensive menu. Until in the late 1940s, the owners decided to scrap everything and stick with just hamburgers, fries, and little else. This brutal simplification gave rise to the quick service system, fewer options, more speed, and the birth of fast food as we know it. White chocolate is a charming imposter. It contains no cocoa solids, only cocoa butter, sugar, and milk. That's why it tastes more like sweet fat than dark chocolate. But its creamy texture and the possibility of coloring and flavoring it have made it a favorite toy of many pastry chefs. At the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, the English defeated a much larger French army thanks to two unexpected allies, ankle-deep mud and the English longbow. The French cavalry literally sank into the ground, while arrows rained down like a deadly shower from afar, rendering the nobleman's shining armor useless. In ancient Rome, wealthy people went crazy for garum, fish guts and intestines, salt and herbs, left to ferment in the sun until it smelled like death, but tasted heavenly. This dark liquid, full of umami like a Roman version of Asian fish sauce, was so valuable that it was transported in amphorae throughout the Mediterranean and was considered almost a high-class luxury. Today, attempts are even being made to recreate its recipe in laboratories and cutting-edge kitchens. Carrot cake didn't start as a hipster dessert, but as a medieval survival trick. When sugar was expensive and scarce, carrots provided natural sweetness and moisture. Unwittingly, those poor cooks invented one of the most popular desserts in the modern world. Plato's real name was Aristocles. Plato was a nickname meaning broad, probably because of his broad shoulders or his wrestler-like physique. Imagine that one of history's most influential philosophers became famous for something akin to fat Aristocles. Worcestershire sauce, the kind that gives a brutal umami kick to a Bloody Mary or a stew, is basically an experiment by two 10th century English pharmacists who mixed vinegars, spices, and fermented anchovies, and forgot about it in a cellar. When they opened the barrel years later, they discovered that fermentation had transformed it into liquid gold, and thus Leah and Perrins and a global culinary icon were born. The smallest bone in your body is the stapes, in the middle ear, measuring just 0.12 inches long. Without this tiny hammer, vibrations from the outside world would never reach your brain as sound. Scottish haggis is traditionally cooked inside a sheep's stomach, stuffed with offal, oats, and spices. What began as extreme resourcefulness ended up becoming a national dish and a symbol of cultural identity. Easter Island is so named because a Dutch explorer arrived there on Easter Sunday in 1722, but its inhabitants knew it as Tipito o Tehenua, the navel of the world. The European name erased centuries of local meaning with just a single entry in the logbook. Prosecco, the Italian sparkling wine that swept the world in the 2010s, owes its lively effervescence to the Charmat method. The second fermentation takes place in enormous stainless steel tanks, not in each bottle. It is faster and cheaper than the traditional method, and that is why it can flood the world with bubbles at an affordable price. Vanilla is the only edible fruit of the orchid family, and outside its region of origin, almost all the flowers must be pollinated by hand, one by one. This minute floral surgery explains why natural vanilla is one of the most expensive spices in the world. The phrase, "let them eat cake," supposedly uttered by Marie Antoinette when told about the people's hunger, doesn't appear in any reliable source from her time. It was political gossip that fits so well with the narrative of the cruel aristocracy that it became popular truth. In ancient Egypt, beer was so essential that pyramid workers received part of their wages in daily jugs of beer. It wasn't just for revelry. It was liquid food, a source of calories, and relatively safe water in a scorching climate. Diamonds have a reputation for being indestructible, but in reality they are just very well-organized carbon. If you heat them above about 1,292 or 1,652 degrees Fahrenheit in the presence of oxygen, they literally burn and disappear, becoming carbon dioxide. In other words, the four-life ring could die in a good bonfire. Boston cream pie isn't really a pie, nor does it look like much at first glance. It's a sponge cake filled with cream and covered in chocolate. But it was born in Boston's Parker House Hotel in the 19th century, was one of the first desserts to use chocolate coating as a shiny armor, and today is the official dessert of the state of Massachusetts. Behind that little cake lies 160 years of fame and recipes copied all over the world. Genghis Khan's soldiers could ride for days across the steppe with almost no food. When everything became scarce, they resorted to an extreme solution: slightly cutting a vein in the horse and drinking some of its blood without killing the animal, which remained their means of transport and battle companion. It was literally an army that fed on its own horses to keep marching. Green tea owes its healthy reputation to how it is processed. The leaves are steamed or quickly sautéed to deactivate the enzyme that would oxidize them. Thanks to this, they retain catechins like EGCG, antioxidant molecules that science studies for their potential protective effects against cell damage and aging. It is basically an infusion of leaves that the industry treats like a mini biochemical laboratory. The pink peppercorns you see in gourmet blends aren't even peppercorns. They are berries from a tree of the genus Chinus, related to the cashew. Therefore, for some people with nut allergies, it can be a real problem, hidden behind that floral and elegant flavor that deceives the eye. The first Chinese emperor, Qin Shi Huang, unified much of China and became morbidly obsessed with immortality. He drank elixirs containing mercury, which ironically ended up poisoning him. While seeking to live forever, he was slowly injecting himself with a metallic poison. The first TV advertisement in the United Kingdom in 1955 was for Gibbs SR toothpaste. On television, which was still almost a luxury, someone suddenly appeared selling toothpaste between programs. It seemed like a minor detail, but it opened the door to the advertising onslaught we now consider normal. Margarine was born as a crisis experiment. Napoleon III offered a prize to whoever invented a cheap substitute for butter for the army and the poor. The chemist Hippolyte Mege mixed fats in milk until he created that somewhat strange product that today fills bread and recipes around the world. A Bronze Age shipwreck discovered off the coast of Turkey, known as Ulu Burun, yielded copper and tin ingots from at least 10 different cultures. It was essentially an international freighter from 3,300 years ago, proof that the Mediterranean was already functioning as a global highway long before the internet. The first Barbie doll didn't appear out of thin air. It was inspired by Bild Lilly, a German doll based on an adult comic book character. Mattel recycled it and rebranded it for girls, creating a toy that would end up marking generations, with a much less innocent origin than it seems. Irish soda bread rises without yeast, just flour, bicarbonate of soda, and buttermilk reacting like a home chemistry experiment. This technique allowed rural families to bake quick and consistent bread even without modern ovens. And today it remains a symbol of simple yet ingenious cooking. Campbell's soup cans are red and white because a company executive fell in love with the colors of the Cornell football team's uniform in 1898. That almost accidental aesthetic decision would eventually become the icon that decades later Warhol would reproduce as pop art. The squid in a good paella has two possible states: buttery or like a bicycle tire. The key is timing. Either you cook it very quickly over high heat so it becomes tender, or you simmer it long and slowly until the flesh relaxes. In between, the proteins tense up and you end up chewing on sea rubber. The sriracha sauce that conquered the world doesn't come from Thailand, but from a factory in California founded by a Vietnamese refugee, David Tran. Since the 1980s, he has produced the famous bottle with the rooster that went viral without massive campaigns. Just word of mouth and chefs saying, "Try this." The iron in your blood was born in the heart of giant stars that exploded as supernovae. Every time one of those stars died, it launched into space the atoms that now form your red blood cells. When we say we are stardust, it's not cheap poetry, it's pure physics. Long before Europe imagined the globe, Anaximander, in the 6th century BC, had already drawn one of the first maps of the known world, with lands floating in the void. It was far from accurate, but it was a huge leap, going from listening to travelers' stories to putting the world on a drawing. In Italy, Parmigiano Reggiano cheese is so valuable and regulated that some banks accept it as loan collateral. They have vaults where, instead of gold, there are wheels of cheese aging for years. Literally, there are businesses financed with cheese. In 1964, the USSR aired its first television advertisement, a music video for Canned Corn, aligned with Nikita Khrushchev's campaign to turn the country into a yellow-gold powerhouse. At the height of communist propaganda, television was also used to convince you to eat more corn. Black tea, the most consumed in the world, differs from green tea in that its leaves are completely oxidized before drying. This oxidation changes the color and aroma, adding malty and smoky notes that have made it the daily hot beverage of billions of people. Broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts, which appear to be completely different vegetables on the plate, are actually the same species, Brassica oleracea. They are all the same wild plant that humans have been shaping for centuries, selecting for giant leaves, cabbage, compact flowers, cauliflower, broccoli, or small shoots on the stem, Brussels sprouts. The modern folding umbrella was literally born out of an artist's frustration with an inconvenient umbrella. In 1928, Viennese sculptor Sława Horowitz went out on a cold, rainy day, grew tired of carrying that enormous thing, and decided to invent one that would fit in a handbag. She designed a telescopic handle, ribs that folded inwards, and in 1929 patented a compact model that was sold under the name Flirt, with thousands of units sold in the first year. Tiramisu is not just a famous dessert. Its very name in Italian means lift me up or cheer me up because it combines strong coffee, sugar, and cocoa into a smooth burst of energy. It originated in northeastern Italy in the 1960s, and since then has become one of the most recognizable desserts on the planet, even having world championships dedicated solely to it, with categories for classic and innovative tiramisu. In its early days, YouTube was an ad-free haven until August 2007, when the first in-video ads appeared, small, semi-transparent strips that slid over the video. That moment marked the brutal shift from a platform for sharing home videos to a global advertising machine. Shortly after, skippable formats like TrueView arrived, and with them, the model we know today. No more watching viral videos without first negotiating with the skip ad button. The blood of many crustaceans, like the horseshoe crab, is blue because it uses copper instead of iron to transport oxygen. The craziest thing, that blue blood is now used in medical tests to detect toxins in vaccines and drugs. So these animals have literally become raw material for modern medicine. The M&M slogan, "Melts in your mouth, not in your hand," was created with soldiers and summer in mind. Chocolate-coated so it wouldn't turn to mush on your fingers. It was a technological promise turned into a catchy phrase, and it worked so well that it still defines the brand decades later. Felix the cat was one of the first animated characters used as a test pattern for experimental television. He was placed in front of cameras to calibrate the image when almost no one owned a television. Before entertaining households, he was used by engineers to adjust cables. Pineapple contains an enzyme, bromelain, that literally eats the proteins in gelatin. That's why if you try to make gelatin with fresh pineapple, it will never set. The enzyme destroys the structure, just like it does with meat when you use it to tenderize it. Each silkworm cocoon is a marvel of engineering, a continuous thread up to about 0.93 miles long, made of fibrin, a protein so strong that it still competes with modern synthetic fibers. That's why a tiny insect can clothe kings, grace runways, and even your pajamas. Quaker Oats instant oatmeal was a logistical staple in World War II. Lightweight, nutritious, and quick to prepare. Each packet was compressed calories for soldiers who didn't have the time or resources for large, hot meals. For centuries, whipped cream was a luxury reserved for noble banquets, where French chefs would whip it by hand until they achieved that white cloud that anyone can buy in a can today. What was once a palace spectacle now comes out of a siphon in your kitchen. Carnivorous plants, like the Venus flytrap, don't eat insects on a whim, but because they live in soils so poor that they need to steal nitrogen and phosphorus from insects. They are the extreme result of, if the soil doesn't give me food, I'll make it myself. The pastry war seems like a meme, but it was a real war between France and Mexico. Among the claims was compensation for a looted pastry shop. The result, cannon fire, a naval blockade, and a conflict named after a dessert. Ambergris, sometimes called whale vomit, is a waxy mass produced in the intestines of sperm whales. When the sea polishes it for years and it washes up on a beach, it can be worth more than gold for its use as a fixative in high-end perfumes. Literally intestinal waste transformed into the ultimate luxury. Apple's 1,984 ad aired only once during the Super Bowl, and that was enough. News programs repeated it for free for days. Apple paid for airtime and gained a legendary campaign worth millions in media coverage. Earl Grey tea is basically black tea scented with bergamot oil, created to please the palate of a British aristocrat obsessed with the flavor of certain Chinese teas. Today, millions of people have breakfast with the personalized drink of a 19th century lord. The first combat submarine, the Turtle, attempted to sink a British ship during the American Revolution. It failed, but it ushered in the era of monsters hidden beneath the sea as weapons of war. True traditional balsamic vinegar is made only in Modena and Reggio Emilia, Italy, and is aged for at least 12 years in small, rotating wooden barrels. The tiny, expensive bottle you see in gourmet shops is the result of decades of patience and slow evaporation. Kombucha is basically sweetened tea possessed by a colony of bacteria and yeast, the famous SCOBY, which looks like a jellyfish in a jar. This gelatinous disc transforms the tea into a tangy, slightly carbonated beverage full of organic acids that many associate with digestive benefits. Many shark eggs resemble small leather pouches with strings at the corners, so much so that sailors nicknamed them mermaid purses. Inside, a tiny predator slowly cooks until it's ready for the ocean. High-quality chocolate contains anandamide, a molecule similar to cannabinoids produced by the brain itself. That "wow, I feel great" feeling after a good bar isn't just gluttony. There's literal happiness chemistry at work. At Cannae in 216 BC, Hannibal executed one of the most brutal military maneuvers in history. He let the center of his troops sink and envelop the Romans from the flanks, creating a pincer movement that virtually annihilated them. That maneuver is still studied in modern military academies. Jeanne Beret was the first woman to circumnavigate the globe, but she had to do it disguised as a man because women were forbidden from embarking on French expeditions in the 18th century. She endured years of travel, suspicion, and danger, and only centuries later is she being recognized as the scientist and explorer she was. The bottlenose dolphin sleeps with half its brain at a time and one eye open. While one half rests, the other takes care of breathing, watching for predators, and continuing to swim. It's the biological version of partial airplane mode. Tiffany blue isn't just a pretty color. It's a registered trademark and part of the jewelry brand's psychological appeal. That sky blue box triggers a mixture of luxury, romance, and something expensive is inside in many people, even before they open it. Tabasco sauce isn't just spicy. Its chili puree is aged for up to 3 years in white oak barrels in Louisiana. It's basically a chili wine, oxidizing and concentrating its flavor before it reaches your taco. The U.S. Declaration of Independence wasn't signed on July 4th, but mostly on August 2nd, 1776. The 4th is the official birthday of the text, not the signatures, patriotic marketing dating back to the 18th century. The sun has such a powerful magnetic field that it forms a giant bubble of plasma, the heliosphere, which envelops the entire solar system beyond Pluto. We live within the sun's aura. In Alesia, Julius Caesar built 2 complete walls around the city, one to contain the Gauls and another, facing outwards, to resist reinforcements. It was a double enclosure that turned his army into both a prison and a fortress. The Cabbage Patch Kids of 1983 weren't just dolls. They were babies for adoption with official papers. People went so crazy that there were fights in stores and a frenzy that foreshadowed modern toy hype culture. Modern chewing gum was born when Thomas Adams tried using tree resin, chicle, to make tires. When that didn't work, he tried sweetening it and chewing it, and unwittingly created a multi-billion-dollar industry that literally thrives on you chewing flavored plastic. And this is all. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Zarpado facts.